Tonight, we drift into a world far beyond our own, a place called Pandora. It's a story of discovery, of connection, and of choosing where you truly belong. Let your mind settle as we journey through this tale, slowly and softly, letting the images unfold like a gentle dream. But before we drift into tonight's sleep story, my name's Murphy. If these stories help you relax, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you'd like, share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always beautiful to see people winding down together across the world under the same night sky. Now let's dim the lights and let the story roll. Our story begins with a man named Jake Sully. Jake is a former Marine, someone who once moved through the world with strength and purpose. But life has changed for him now. An injury during combat left him unable to walk, and he spends his days in a wheelchair, navigating a world that feels too small for the person he used to be. Jake has a weathered face that holds both sadness and determination. His eyes carry the weight of loss, but there's still a spark there, something restless and searching. He doesn't say much, this Jake Sully. He's the kind of person who watches more than he speaks, who keeps his thoughts tucked away behind a quiet exterior. His life on Earth feels empty now. The cities are crowded and grey. People rush past without seeing each other. Jake moves through his days feeling invisible, just another face in the endless stream of humanity. He spends time in dark bars where the noise helps him forget, where he doesn't have to think about what he's lost or what his future might hold. But then something unexpected happens. Jake had a twin brother named Tommy, a scientist, someone who studied things Jake never much cared about. Tommy was brilliant, dedicated to his research, always talking about discoveries and possibilities. Where Jake had chosen the military, Tommy had chosen academia. They looked identical but lived completely different lives. Then Tommy dies suddenly, senselessly, in a random act of violence on a city street. And just like that, Jake's world shifts again. After his brother's funeral, Jake is approached by people in expensive suits. They work for something called the RDA Corporation, the Resources Development Administration. These are business people, the kind who speak in numbers and bottom lines, who see the universe as something to be catalogued and converted into profit. They tell Jake about his brother's work. Tommy had been selected for a special mission, something extraordinary happening far from Earth. But the program required years of preparation and an enormous financial investment. Tommy had been training for something called the Avatar program, and his specific avatar body had already been created, grown, waiting for him. Here's where things get interesting for Jake. The avatar was built using Tommy's DNA, his genetic code. And since Jake and Tommy were identical twins, Jake's DNA is a perfect match. The corporation has a problem. They've invested too much money to simply abandon the project. They need someone who can use Tommy's avatar body. They offer Jake a proposal. Come to Pandora, take his brother's place, and in return, they'll pay for the surgery that could let him walk again. They'll restore what he lost. They'll give him back his legs. Jake sits in his small apartment, looking at the offer, at the papers spread before him. Outside his window, the city continues its endless grey rhythm. He has nothing keeping him on Earth anymore. No family, no purpose, no reason to stay. And they're offering him something he thought was gone forever. The ability to walk, to run, to feel whole again. He accepts. The journey to Pandora takes years, though Jake doesn't experience most of it. Space travel at this distance requires something called cryo-sleep. Jake is placed in a chamber where his body is frozen, preserved, suspended between life and something like death. Time passes without him, years flowing by in what feels like a single dream. When Jake finally wakes, it's gradual. First there's darkness, then blurred light, then voices telling him to breathe slowly, to take his time. His body feels heavy, cold, strange. Other people are waking around him, all of them emerging from their own chambers like butterflies from cocoons. The ship they're on is massive, a city in space, floating through the darkness between stars. Jake floats in the zero gravity, pulling himself along handles and rails. His legs don't work here either, but somehow that matters less when everyone is floating, when up and down have no meaning. Through the windows of the ship, space stretches in every direction, endless and black, and filled with distant points of light. Jake stares out at it, feeling very small, feeling very far from everything he's ever known. Earth is behind them now. So far away, it's just another star. The crew members move efficiently through their routines. They've done this before, ferried human workers and scientists to this distant moon, and they'll do it again. They speak in casual voices about procedures and protocols, making the extraordinary seem ordinary through repetition. Jake pulls himself to the meeting area, where someone explains what they're about to see. Pandora orbits a gas giant called Polyphemus, they say. It's a moon, not a planet, but it's roughly Earth-sized, and it's beautiful in ways that Earth used to be, before humans covered it in concrete and smoke. When Pandora first appears in the windows, Jake stops moving. Everyone stops. Even those who've seen it before pause to look. The moon is blue and green, covered in swirling white clouds that drift across its surface like silk scarves. From space, it looks peaceful, pristine, untouched. Vast oceans catch the light. Continents spread across the surface, covered in what must be forests, jungles, endless vegetation that makes Earth's remaining wilderness seem like a small garden by comparison. But there's something else, something unusual. Massive rock formations float in the air above certain regions, huge mountains that simply hover in the sky, defying everything Jake knows about how worlds should work. They hang suspended, connected by waterfalls that flow between them, caught in some invisible force that makes the impossible real. Jake presses close to the window, his breath fogging the glass. After all the emptiness of space, all those years of frozen sleep, seeing something alive feels like waking up in more ways than one. The ship begins its descent, shaking slightly as it enters Pandora's atmosphere. Jake straps himself in, feeling the gravity return, feeling the familiar heaviness in his legs that reminds him of what he cannot do. The shaking increases, metal groaning softly around them, and then they break through the cloud layer. Below them now, the forests are visible in detail. Trees taller than any building Jake has ever seen reach towards the sky. Rivers wind through valleys like silver ribbons. Everything is in motion, clouds racing their shadows across the canopy, birds or flying creatures wheeling in great flocks, the whole world breathing and living and humming with energy. The ship lands at Hell's Gate, the human outpost on Pandora. It's not a gentle name, and as Jake gets his first glimpse of the place, he understands why. The base is an ugly scar on the beautiful landscape, all grey metal and harsh angles, surrounded by high fences and warning signs. Immediately, Jake notices the military presence. Armed soldiers patrol the perimeter, their weapons ready, their eyes constantly scanning the forest beyond the fence. Large mechanized suits, called AMP suits, stand guard at key positions. These are huge exoskeletons that humans can climb inside, making them 3 times their normal height and giving them incredible strength. The atmosphere inside Hell's Gate is tense. This isn't a peaceful scientific outpost. It's more like a forward operating base in hostile territory. Everyone seems wound tight, ready for something to go wrong. Signs everywhere remind people that Pandora's atmosphere is toxic to humans. Step outside without a mask and you'll die in minutes. Jake rolls through the corridors in his wheelchair, following a guide who explains the basics without much warmth. The walls are covered in safety posters showing the various ways Pandora can kill you. The wildlife, they explain, is extremely aggressive. Nearly everything on this moon is bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than its Earth equivalent. They pass through the cafeteria, where workers eat processed food that looks nothing like the abundant life outside. They pass recreation areas where people try to pretend they're not trapped on a moon, millions of miles from home. Everything smells recycled, artificial. Nothing like the rich scents that must exist beyond those walls. In the briefing room, a military man addresses the new arrivals. This is Colonel Miles Quaritch, and he's exactly what Jake expects a military commander to be. Hard, direct, covered in scars that tell stories of combat. Quaritch has a presence that fills the room, a voice that doesn't need to be loud to command attention. Quaritch tells them the truth, simply. Pandora is dangerous. The indigenous population, the Na'vi, are hostile to human presence. They're tall, they're skilled, and they want the humans gone. The wildlife will kill you given any opportunity. The plants can be toxic. Even the ground can be lethal in certain areas. But, Quaritch continues, there's a reason humans are here. Beneath one particular Na'vi settlement sits the largest deposit of a mineral called unobtainium, a substance so valuable that its worth makes every danger acceptable to the corporation. This mineral is why Hell's Gate exists. It's why ships make the 6-year journey. It's why people risk their lives on this beautiful, deadly moon. Jake listens quietly, his military training helping him absorb the information without reaction. He's been in dangerous places before. This is just a different kind of danger, on a much stranger battlefield. After the briefing, Jake is taken to meet the head of the Avatar program. He rolls into a laboratory space that feels different from the rest of the base, more cluttered, more lived in, filled with plants and samples and screens showing images of Pandora's incredible biology. Dr. Grace Augustin is working at a screen when Jake arrives, and she doesn't look up immediately. When she does, her expression isn't welcoming. Grace is a scientist through and through, someone who values knowledge and patience and careful study. She has gray-streaked hair pulled back practically, eyes that have seen too much and sleep too little, and a manner that suggests she doesn't suffer fools gladly. She's immediately frustrated that Jake is here instead of his brother. Tommy was a trained scientist, she explains, someone who studied for years to be part of this program. He understood the work, the importance of what they were doing. And now she's got a Marine, someone with no training, no education in xenobiology or ethnography, no understanding of the careful research they've been conducting. Grace makes her feelings clear without cruelty, but without softening them either. This is a disaster as far as she's concerned. The corporation has sent her a replacement body without a mind to drive it properly. She has nothing against Jake personally, but he represents everything she's been fighting. The military mindset, the corporate interests, the forces that see Pandora as something to conquer rather than understand. But Grace is also pragmatic. The Avatar exists. Jake's DNA matches. They've spent too much time and money to abandon it now. So she'll work with what she has, even if it's not what she wants. She takes Jake through the basics. The Avatar program, she explains, was created to solve a problem. Humans can't breathe Pandora's atmosphere. They can't move freely through the world they're trying to study. They're trapped in bases and vehicles, separated from the very thing they came to understand. The solution was elegant and expensive. Using Na'vi DNA combined with human genetic material, they grew hybrid bodies, avatars that look Na'vi, but can be controlled by human consciousness. Through a neural link, a human can mentally inhabit their avatar body, walking around in Pandora's environment as if they truly belong there. The technology is sophisticated beyond anything Jake has encountered. It's not virtual reality or remote control. When you're in your avatar, you are your avatar. You feel what it feels, move how it moves, experience the world through its senses. Your human body lies in a special link unit, protected and maintained, while your consciousness rides in the avatar body. Grace shows Jake his brother's avatar, floating in a tank filled with clear liquid. It's strange seeing it for the first time. This tall, blue-skinned being, with features that somehow echo Tommy's face, echo Jake's face. The avatar is beautiful in an alien way, with large golden eyes, a strong build, a tail that drifts gently into the fluid. It's both familiar and utterly foreign. Over the next few days, Jake learns more about how everything works. The avatar bodies are kept in a special facility when not in use, suspended in amnio tanks that maintain them. They're grown rather than built, biological rather than mechanical, living creatures, even when no human consciousness inhabits them. The link units where humans lie during the connection are scattered throughout the base. They look like high-tech beds inside small chambers, covered with equipment that reads brain activity and facilitates the neural connection. When you lie down and close your eyes, technicians initiate the link, and your consciousness transfers to your avatar body. Grace explains that learning to control an avatar takes time. It's not like controlling your own body. The proportions are different. Avatars are nearly 10 feet tall, with tails that must be balanced, ears that move independently, senses that perceive the world differently. Most people need weeks or months to achieve smooth coordination. Jake also meets other members of the Avatar team. There's Norm Spellman, a scientist who trained alongside Tommy, who also has an avatar body. Norm is friendly in an earnest way, clearly knowledgeable about Na'vi culture and Pandora's ecosystem. He's been studying for this opportunity his entire adult life, and there's something both admirable and sad about his dedication. The team works in what they call the biolab, studying samples, recording data, trying to understand Pandora's interconnected web of life. They talk about the neural networks they've discovered, how the trees and plants seem to communicate through biological connections. They describe the Na'vi culture with respect and fascination, speaking about them as people, not obstacles. This is Grace's true passion, Jake realizes. She doesn't care about the mining operation or the corporation's profits. She cares about Pandora itself, about the Na'vi, about understanding this world before human presence destroys it. She's been fighting to protect what she studies, and losing that battle slowly, watching as military and corporate interests push harder for expansion. Grace runs a small school at one point, Jake learns, where she taught Na'vi children. She formed relationships with them, learned their language, earned their trust. Then something happened. Violence, death, a breakdown of relations that she still carries like a wound. The school closed. The Na'vi stopped trusting humans, and Grace has been trying to rebuild that bridge ever since. Finally, the day comes for Jake to try his first link. The technicians help him into the link unit, adjusting the equipment around his still body. Grace watches from the control room, ready to monitor everything, ready to shut down the connection if something goes wrong. Jake lies back and closes his eyes. The technicians tell him to relax, to not fight the sensation. There's a moment of darkness, a feeling of movement without moving, and then something shifts. Jake opens his eyes, but they're not his eyes anymore. He's looking up at bright lights, at technicians leaning over him, and everything is sharper, clearer, colors more vivid than he's ever seen. He tries to sit up, and the movement is awkward, too fast, too strong. His body responds in ways he doesn't expect. Hands reach out to steady him, and Jake realizes he's seeing people he recognizes, but they look tiny now, half his height. He's in his avatar body. He's 10 feet tall, blue-skinned, lying on a support table in the avatar facility. Someone tells him to take it slow, but Jake isn't listening, because he can feel his legs. After years in a wheelchair, after accepting that part of himself was gone forever, he can feel his legs responding, muscles flexing, toes curling. The sensation is overwhelming. Jake slides off the table despite the protests around him. His legs wobble. Balance feels strange, but they're holding him. He's standing. He takes a step, then another, and he's walking. Then suddenly he's running, bursting through the doors into the larger space, ignoring everyone shouting at him to slow down, to be careful. He runs through the connecting corridor, his new body moving with a grace he never had even before his injury. The tail helps with balance. His legs are powerful, designed for a world with less gravity than Earth. He feels light, strong, capable. He bursts outside into a contained garden area where avatar bodies can safely exist in Pandora's atmosphere. The air hits him first, cool, rich, filled with scents both familiar and alien. The gravity is gentle. Jake runs in circles, laughing, feeling grass under his feet, feeling wind against his skin, feeling alive in a way he'd forgotten was possible. Around him, Grace and the others watch with mixed expressions, concern, understanding, maybe a little envy for his joy. When Jake finally stops, breathing hard, grinning broadly, he stands under Pandora's sky and looks around at this strange new world. The trees tower above, creatures call in the distance. Everything is vivid and real and possible again. Grace approaches carefully. She tells him this isn't a game, that the avatar body is a tool for research, not recreation. But even she can't quite hide understanding. She saw how he moved in that wheelchair, saw the deadness in his eyes, and now she sees someone alive again. That night, when Jake disconnects and returns to his human body, the contrast is devastating. He opens his eyes in the link unit and immediately feels the familiar absence in his legs, the familiar limitations. The technicians help him back into his wheelchair, and Jake feels the weight of his human existence settling back onto his shoulders. But something has changed. He's tasted possibility. He knows that in his avatar body, he can do things he never thought he'd do again. And that knowledge changes everything. After a few days of basic training with his avatar body, Jake is cleared to join an actual mission outside Hell's Gate. Grace leads a small team that includes Jake and Norm, along with a few security personnel. Their goal is to collect samples from the forest, document plant species, and hopefully have a peaceful encounter with any Na'vi they might meet. The team travels in a large vehicle designed to traverse Pandora's terrain, something called a Samson helicopter. As they fly over the forest, Jake gets his first real look at Pandora's wilderness beyond the base. The trees are massive, their trunks wider than any structure Jake has seen. The canopy stretches in every direction, an emerald sea that shifts gently in the wind. They land in a clearing near a stream, where the ground is covered in unusual vegetation. Everything here seems designed to react. Plants that draw back when touched, flowers that spiral closed at the approach of shadows, moss that glows faintly even in daylight. Grace moves through it all with practiced ease, collecting samples, recording observations, explaining things to Jake in a voice that holds genuine wonder. Norm is equally enthusiastic, pointing out species, talking about the interconnected root systems that link the trees together, describing theories about how Pandora's entire ecosystem might function as a single network. It's clearly the work they love, the reason they endured 6 years of cryosleep to be here. The security guards maintain a perimeter, their weapons ready, their eyes constantly scanning the forest. One of them is a woman who moves with calm competence, checking sight lines, monitoring for threats. The tension between the scientists and the military personnel is obvious. The scientists want to explore, the guards want to minimize exposure and return to base. Jake finds himself caught between both worlds. He understands the military caution, the need for security protocols. But he's also experiencing everything for the first time through his avatar body, and the world is almost overwhelming in its richness. Colors seem more vibrant. His ears pick up sounds his human hearing would miss. Even the air tastes different, complex, alive. Grace explains that they are searching for specific botanical samples. There are plants on Pandora, with properties that could revolutionize medicine on Earth, compounds that simply don't exist in Earth biology. But studying them requires being out here, in the forest, vulnerable. The peaceful research mission changes suddenly when a creature emerges from the forest. It's something Grace calls a thanator, and even she seems frightened. The animal is massive, heavily armored with dark skin and glowing patterns. It moves like a panther, but sized like a tank, all predatory grace and obvious danger. The thanator roars, a sound that reverberates through Jake's chest, and suddenly the security team is shouting, raising weapons. Grace is screaming at everyone to hold their positions, not to shoot unless absolutely necessary. The creature circles them, assessing, deciding if they're prey or threat. Time seems to slow. Jake watches the thanator's muscles bunch, sees its yellow eyes focused on one of the guards. Everything in Jake's military training says to neutralize the threat, to take the shot. But Grace's voice cuts through, insisting that they don't need to kill it, that making noise and standing their ground will be enough. For a long moment, everything hangs in balance. Then the thanator makes a huffing sound, turns, and disappears back into the forest as suddenly as it appeared. The entire encounter lasted perhaps 30 seconds, but Jake's heart is racing, his new body flooded with adrenaline that feels both familiar and strange. Grace checks on everyone, making sure no one is hurt. She explains that the Thanator wasn't really hunting them. It was assessing, curious about these strange blue creatures in its territory. If they'd fired, they'd have made an enemy. By standing their ground calmly, they passed some kind of test. But the encounter has shaken everyone. The security team wants to return to base immediately. Grace argues for continuing the mission, but it's clear that the mood has shifted. They're all remembering that they're visitors here, guests in a world that doesn't particularly want them. They compromise by moving to a different area, farther from where the Thanator appeared. Grace leads them to a grove of trees with unusual bioluminescent properties. She's documenting their root patterns when Jake wanders slightly away from the group, drawn by a sound he can't quite identify. Jake doesn't mean to separate from the others. He's following something. A bird, perhaps, or a flutter of movement between the trees. His avatar body moves so easily through the forest that he doesn't realize how far he's gone until he turns around and can't see the rest of the team. He tries to retrace his steps, but everything looks similar. The trees are massive and numerous. The vegetation is thick. He calls out, but the forest seems to swallow his voice. Jake realizes he's made a serious mistake. He's alone in an environment he doesn't understand, separated from the people who know how to survive here. The sun is sinking lower, and the forest is changing around him. More plants begin to glow softly, their bioluminescence activating as light fades. It's beautiful and deeply unsettling. Jake starts walking in what he hopes is the right direction, but he's not sure anymore. Every direction looks the same. He tries his radio, but something is interfering with the signal. Maybe the vegetation, maybe the magnetic fields that make those mountains float. Maybe something else entirely. All he gets is static. Jake keeps moving, because staying still feels dangerous, but he has no idea if he's going towards safety or deeper into the wilderness. As darkness falls completely, the forest transforms into something magical and terrifying. Everything glows, the plants, the ground itself. Even the air seems filled with floating spores that drift like gentle stars. Jake has never seen anything like it. It's breathtakingly beautiful, and he's utterly lost. He hears sounds around him, movements in the darkness. He knows there are predators here, animals far more dangerous than anything on Earth. His only weapon is a knife they issued him, laughably inadequate against the creatures Grace has described. Jake climbs a tree, thinking height might offer some safety, but he's not sure. Nothing about this situation is what his military training prepared him for. From his perch in the tree, Jake watches the forest live its nightlife. Creatures move through the branches around him. Something large passes below, its footsteps heavy, its breathing audible. Jake stays absolutely still, hardly breathing, hoping he's not noticed. This is when true fear settles in. Not the quick fear of combat, but the slower fear of being completely out of your depth, of recognizing how small and vulnerable you are. Jake had felt powerful in his avatar body, strong and capable. Now he realizes that strength means nothing without knowledge, without understanding this world's rules. The attack comes suddenly. A pack of creatures Grace had called viper wolves emerges from the darkness, six-legged predators with glowing eyes and teeth that seem designed specifically for tearing flesh. They've caught Jake's scent, and they're hunting. Jake drops from the tree, landing hard, starting to run. But there's nowhere to go. The viper wolves are faster, more agile, at home in this terrain in ways Jake will never be. They circle him, snapping, testing his defenses. Jake has his knife out, turning to keep them all in view, knowing this is probably how he dies. Then something extraordinary happens. Arrows begin flying from the darkness, striking the viper wolves with lethal precision. The creatures yelp and scatter, and Jake sees his savior for the first time. She's Na'vi, tall and lithe, moving through the forest with a grace that makes Jake's earlier running seem clumsy. She has long, dark hair, large eyes that catch the bioluminescent light, skin marked with subtle patterns that seem to glow faintly. She carries a bow carved from some dark wood, and she's looking at Jake with an expression of profound irritation. The woman speaks in Na'vi, words Jake doesn't understand, but whose tone is perfectly clear. She's angry at him for being here, for causing this disturbance, for making her intervene. She looks at the dead viper wolves with genuine sadness, touching them gently, speaking softly. These were living creatures, her expression says, killed because of his stupidity. Jake tries to thank her in English, but she just shakes her head and turns to leave. He follows her, calling out, trying to express gratitude or explanation. She walks faster, clearly trying to lose him. Jake stumbles over roots, pushes through plants, struggling to keep up with someone who moves through this forest like water. Then something stops her. Floating down from the trees come dozens of small, jellyfish-like creatures. They're glowing white, pulsing gently as they drift through the air. They land on Jake, covering his shoulders and arms, their light reflecting in his wide eyes. The Na'vi woman stops walking and turns, her expression shifting from irritation to wonder. She approaches slowly, looking at the creatures on Jake with new attention. She speaks softly in Na'vi, words that sound almost like prayer. Then she looks at Jake differently, her head tilted, seeing something she didn't see before. She makes a decision. She gestures for him to follow, and this time she waits for him, moving at a pace he can match. Jake follows her through the forest, having no idea where they're going or what just happened, but understanding somehow that his life has just changed direction. The woman leads Jake through the forest for what feels like hours. The glowing vegetation creates paths of light that she follows effortlessly. Jake struggles to keep up, his avatar body still clumsy compared to her natural grace. She doesn't speak to him, doesn't look back, just moves forward with clear purpose. They arrive at a massive tree, unlike anything Jake has seen even on Pandora. It's enormous, its trunk wider than a city block, its branches spreading so far they create their own canopy. Glowing patterns flow across its bark, like slow rivers of light. This is Home Tree, though Jake doesn't know that yet. This is where the Omaticaya clan lives. As they approach, Na'vi warriors appear from the shadows, their bows drawn, arrows pointed at Jake. They're all tall, strong, moving with coordinated precision. The woman speaks rapidly in Na'vi, gesturing at Jake, explaining something. The warriors look skeptical, some clearly arguing for killing this intruder immediately. Jake raises his hands slowly, trying to appear non-threatening. He says he comes in peace, though he's not sure anyone understands him. The warriors form a circle around him, their weapons never lowering, and begin marching him toward Home Tree. As they enter the tree, Jake sees that it's not just a tree, but a complete dwelling. The interior is vast, with multiple levels connected by natural ramps and pathways. Families live here in spaces carved from the living wood. Children play in areas that wind between the massive roots. Fires burn in carefully tended spots, their light mixing with the tree's natural glow. Everyone stops to stare at Jake. Some children hide behind adults. Warriors grip their weapons tighter. The woman who saved him walks beside him, speaking to others, defending her decision to bring him here. Jake catches her name as others say it, Neytiri, and he can tell from the way people respond to her that she holds some status in this community. Jake is brought before the clan's leaders. The chief is a powerful Na'vi man named Etukan, his presence commanding immediate respect. He sits with straight posture, his expression serious, examining this strange blue being that claims to be Dreamwalker, what the Na'vi call the Avatar bodies. Beside Etukan sits a woman who Jake somehow knows is deeply important. This is Moat, the clan's Tsahik, their spiritual leader. She has an intensity in her eyes that seems to look through Jake rather than at him. She wears intricate jewelry and face paint, marks of her position, and when she speaks, everyone listens. Moat approaches Jake, studying him closely. She circles him, examining his avatar body, touching his arms, his face, his hair. It's not friendly or welcoming. It's assessment. She's determining what he is, where he comes from, why he's here. She speaks in Na'vi, asking questions that Jake cannot answer. Neytiri translates some of it. Moat wants to know why a dreamwalker wanders alone in the forest. Wants to know what Jake seeks. Wants to know if he comes with good intentions or if he's a scout for the Sky People's destruction. Jake tries to explain. He says he was separated from his group. He means no harm. He just wants to learn. The words sound weak, even to him. Insufficient explanations for his presence in their home. The gathered clan members murmur among themselves, clearly divided on what should be done with him. Some argue for sending him away immediately. Others suggest killing him as a warning to other Sky People. The debate grows heated, voices rising in a language Jake doesn't understand, but whose emotions are perfectly clear. He stands in the center of their judgment, acutely aware that his life depends on these next moments. Neytiri speaks then, telling them something about the signs she witnessed, the sacred seeds that landed on Jake, marking him as someone touched by Ewa. Jake doesn't know what this means, but he sees it affects the discussion. Moat looks at her daughter with an expression that holds both respect and concern. Finally, Moat makes a decision. She speaks in English, her voice accented but clear. She says that Jake may stay, that Neytiri will teach him their ways, that they will see if there is anything in this dreamwalker worth knowing. But she warns him, if he proves false, if he brings danger to their people, he will die. The words are not a threat. They're simply truth, stated plainly. After the judgment, things happen quickly. The clan accepts Moat's decision, though many don't look happy about it. Neytiri is clearly less than thrilled with her assignment. She looks at Jake with an expression that suggests he's a burden she's been unfairly asked to carry. But she takes her responsibility seriously. She leads Jake to a quieter area of Home Tree and begins trying to teach him basic words. The Na'vi language is musical, full of sounds that Jake's human mouth could never make, but his avatar body can approximate. He stumbles through simple phrases while Neytiri corrects him with diminishing patience. Later, she takes him outside the tree to a place she calls the Tree of Voices. It's a smaller tree, but no less magnificent. Its branches filled with hanging tendrils that glow and seem to move with their own will. Neytiri explains in halting English that this is a sacred place, where the voices of their ancestors live, where the people come to hear wisdom and find connection. She demonstrates, taking one of the tendrils and touching it to the neural cue that extends from the back of every Na'vi's head. Her expression becomes distant, peaceful, like she's listening to something only she can hear. Then she disconnects and looks at Jake, gesturing for him to try. Jake hesitates. The neural cue is something his avatar body has, hanging from the back of his head like a long braid. He's been told not to touch it, that it's sensitive, important. But Neytiri is waiting, and he carefully brings the cue forward and touches it to one of the tree's tendrils. The connection is instant and overwhelming. Jake can hear something, not voices exactly, but a sense of presence, of memories flowing like water. It's as if the tree is communicating directly with his nervous system, sharing something beyond words. He sees flashes of things he doesn't understand, feels emotions that aren't his own, experiences a connection to something vast and alive. When he breaks the connection, he's breathing hard, his mind trying to process what just happened. Neytiri is watching him with an expression he can't quite read. This is what it means to be Na'vi, her look says. This is what you will never truly understand. That night, Jake disconnects from his avatar and returns to his human body. He's back in the link unit at Hell's Gate, surrounded by the cold metal and artificial light of the human base. Grace is waiting for him, eager to hear everything, recording his observations, asking detailed questions about the Na'vi clan structure, their language, their responses. Jake describes what he can, but he's distracted. His mind is still in the forest, still feeling that connection to the tree of voices, still seeing Neytiri's face in the bioluminescent glow. Grace notices his distraction, but doesn't comment on it. She's excited because this is the first real contact they've had with the Omaticaya clan in years. Colonel Quaritch also wants a report. Jake is taken to his office, where the colonel listens with interest to descriptions of Home Tree's interior, the number of warriors, their weapons and defensive positions. Jake realizes uncomfortably that he's providing intelligence that could be used against the Na'vi, but he tells himself it's just information, just observational data. Quaritch is pleased. He tells Jake to keep his eyes open, to learn everything he can about the Na'vi, their weaknesses, their way of life. If the Na'vi can be convinced to relocate peacefully, Quaritch says, then everyone wins. But the colonel needs to know what they're dealing with. He needs detailed intelligence. Jake returns to his small quarters on base, exhausted. In his bunk, he records a video log, talking to the camera about everything he's experienced. It's strange hearing himself describe it. The forest, the Na'vi, the tree connection. The words sound inadequate, failing to capture the reality of what he felt. He falls asleep thinking about Pandora, about the forest glowing in darkness, about Neytiri moving through the trees like she's part of them. In his dreams, he's running again, his legs strong and sure, the wind in his face smelling of growing things and distant rain. Days blend into weeks as Jake's training begins in earnest. Each morning, he enters the link unit and wakes in his avatar body, where Neytiri is already waiting with thinly veiled impatience. She treats this assignment like a burden, something she's been commanded to do rather than something she wants. And Jake, for his part, proves to be a frustrating student. Everything that seemed natural to watch Neytiri do becomes impossibly difficult when Jake tries it himself. Running through the forest without tripping over roots, moving silently instead of crashing through vegetation like a wounded animal, reading the signs that Pandora constantly provides, broken branches indicating which way a creature passed, subtle color changes in plants, warning of danger, the quality of silence that means a predator is near. Neytiri demonstrates everything with effortless grace, then watches Jake stumble through his attempts with an expression of profound disappointment. She corrects him sharply, her words mixing Na'vi and English in ways that make her frustration perfectly clear. He's clumsy, she tells him, loud, blind to everything the forest is saying. He has eyes but does not see, ears but does not hear. But Jake doesn't quit. His military training taught him persistence, how to endure when things are difficult, how to push through failure toward improvement. Each day he gets slightly better. His movements become a fraction smoother. He starts noticing details he would have missed before. The small victories feel enormous. The other Na'vi watch this process with varying reactions. Some find it amusing, this dream walker crashing through their world like a baby learning to walk. Others view it with suspicion, wondering why they're teaching Sky people anything about their ways. Children sometimes follow at a distance, giggling at Jake's mistakes, earning sharp words from Neytiri to show respect. Slowly, grudgingly, Neytiri's teaching style begins to shift. She still corrects Jake constantly, still shows frustration at his errors, but she also starts explaining things in greater detail. She tells him why certain plants should be avoided, how to read the position of the sun through the canopy, which water sources are safe to drink from. She's still not friendly, but she's becoming more patient, like a stern teacher with a slow student who at least tries hard. Language lessons happen throughout each day. Neytiri points to things and says their names in Na'vi, making Jake repeat the words until his pronunciation improves. The language is complex, full of sounds that require using his avatar body's alien vocal cords in specific ways. Some words come easily. Others take dozens of attempts before Neytiri nods approval. Jake learns practical vocabulary first, the names of plants, animals, tools, words for actions, run, climb, hunt, eat. Ways to express basic needs and ask simple questions. His Na'vi is broken and heavily accented, but Neytiri can understand him now, and gradually he begins understanding conversations happening around him. But language is only part of what Jake needs to learn. The Na'vi have customs, social rules that govern every interaction. Neytiri teaches him proper greetings, how to show respect to elders, how to address warriors versus families versus children. She explains the concept of seeing, truly seeing another person, acknowledging their spirit, connecting beyond surface appearances. The phrase she teaches him is simple but profound. Oilangati kameye, I see you. Not I look at you, or I notice you, but I see into you. I recognize your true self. When Na'vi greet each other this way, it's not casual. It's acknowledgement of the other person's worth, their place in the world, their connection to Ewa. Jake also learns about Ewa, though understanding this concept proves difficult. Ewa is not a god in the way Jake understands gods. Ewa is Pandora itself, the living network that connects all things. The trees, the plants, the animals, the Na'vi themselves, all are part of Ewa. All share consciousness through the neural connections that flow through Pandora's ecosystem. When Neytiri speaks of Ewa, her voice carries reverence, but also matter-of-factness. This isn't faith or belief. To the Na'vi, Ewa is simply reality, as obvious and present as the air they breathe. They don't pray to Ewa hoping to be heard. They connect to Ewa, plug directly into the planetary consciousness, and receive wisdom from the collected experiences of all living things. This challenges everything Jake thought he understood about the world. The Na'vi aren't primitive people with superstitious beliefs. They're people with a direct neural interface to their entire planet. Their religion is actually just a description of measurable biological connections that science has confirmed exist. It's humbling and slightly overwhelming. One of Jake's first major challenges is learning to ride. The Na'vi use creatures called Pali, which humans have named dire horses. They're huge, six-legged animals with smooth skin instead of fur, strong enough to carry Na'vi warriors through the forest at incredible speeds. Neytiri brings Jake to where several dire horses graze peacefully. She explains that to ride, you must first bond with the animal, not simply mount it and control it, but truly connect with it through Tsahelu, the neural link that every Na'vi can make with other creatures. She demonstrates, approaching a dire horse calmly, speaking softly to it. The animal lowers its head, allowing her to bring her cue forward and connect it to the animal's corresponding tendrils. The bond is made, and Neytiri's posture shifts slightly. She's no longer separate from the animal. They move together, think together, operate as a single unit. Now Jake must try. He approaches a dire horse, trying to project calmness, while his heart races with nervousness. The animal snorts and stamps, sensing his uncertainty. It takes several attempts before the creature allows him close enough, and when Jake finally makes the connection, the sensation is startling. He can feel the animal's emotions, its wariness, its strength, its own distinct personality. But more than that, he can sense its body awareness, its balance, its movements. When he thinks about moving forward, the dire horse moves. When he shifts his weight, the animal responds. They're communicating directly, mind to mind. No translation needed. Neytiri tells him to ride, and Jake hangs on as the dire horse takes off through the forest. It's terrifying and exhilarating. Trees blur past. Wind rushes in his face. The animal moves with powerful grace, and Jake can feel its joy in the running, its pleasure in being part of the chase. When he finally learns to sync his breathing with the animal's rhythm, to trust the bond instead of fighting it, the experience becomes almost transcendent. He falls off repeatedly at first. The dire horse stops suddenly, and Jake doesn't, tumbling over its neck into the soft moss. Or he leans the wrong direction and slides sideways. Each failure earns sharp comments from Neytiri and laughter from Na'vi children watching from the branches. But gradually, Jake improves. The bond becomes more natural. He starts understanding what the dire horse needs from him and what he can request from it. Riding through the forest on a dire horse, connected through Tsahelu, feeling the animal's power and grace, Jake understands a little better why the Na'vi pity the Sky People. Humans move through Pandora in metal vehicles, sealed away from direct experience, controlling everything through machines and technology. The Na'vi move through Pandora as part of it, connected to the life around them in ways that technology can never replicate. As Jake spends more time with the Omaticaya clan, he begins to understand their daily rhythms. Life in Home Tree follows patterns shaped by necessity and tradition, by the cycles of Pandora's days and seasons, by the bonds that hold the community together. Mornings often begin with communal activities. Hunters prepare for the day, checking their bows, discussing which areas they'll track. Gatherers organize baskets for collecting food, talking about which plants are ready for harvest. Artisans work on tools, weapons, clothing, creating the things the clan needs. Everyone contributes. everyone has a role. Jake watches families interact, seeing the tenderness between parents and children, the respect shown to elders, the easy camaraderie between friends. The Na'vi touch each other often, hands on shoulders, fingers brushing arms, casual physical connection that shows care. They sing together while working, their voices blending in harmonies that echo through Home Tree's vast interior. Meals are communal events where the clan gathers to share food and stories. The Na'vi eat simply: fruits, vegetables, grains, and meat from hunted animals. But before eating meat, they give thanks to the animal that gave its life, acknowledging the sacrifice, promising that the death will nourish life. Nothing is wasted. Every part of a killed animal is used with care and respect. Jake sits with them, learning to eat Na'vi food, finding that his avatar body's tastes are different from his human preferences. Some things that should taste strange are delicious. Other familiar flavors seem wrong somehow. Neytiri occasionally puts food in front of him, gesturing for him to try it, watching his reaction with amusement when he makes faces at unexpected flavors. In the evenings, the clan often gathers to tell stories. Elder Na'vi speak of history, of great hunters from generations past, of times when challenges threatened the people and courage saved them. They speak of the first songs, the first bonds with the land, the wisdom that Ewa has shared over countless years. Children listen with rapt attention, learning their culture through these oral histories. Jake realizes this is what humans lost somewhere along the way. This sense of community, of belonging to something larger than yourself, of being held in a web of relationships where everyone matters. In the Sky People's world, you can be utterly alone in a city of millions. Here, such loneliness is impossible. You're always part of the people, always connected, always held. But Jake's time on Pandora isn't just about learning the Na'vi way. Each evening, he disconnects from his avatar and returns to his human body, to Hell's Gate, to the reality of why he's actually here. Colonel Quaritch wants regular reports. Jake sits in the Colonel's office, describing what he's learned about Home Tree's layout, about the clan's numbers and capabilities. He tells himself this is just information, that understanding the Na'vi helps both sides, that knowledge prevents conflict. But some part of him knows he's becoming a spy, betraying people who are beginning to trust him. Quaritch listens carefully, sometimes asking specific questions. How many warriors does the clan have? What kind of weapons? What are their defensive capabilities? Where do they keep their supplies? Jake answers, feeling uncomfortable but not yet willing to stop. The Colonel seems pleased with his progress, mentions again that this intelligence could help negotiate a peaceful relocation. Grace, meanwhile, wants different information. She asks Jake about Na'vi culture, their stories, their relationship with the environment. She's excited by everything he describes, recording it meticulously, analyzing it academically. To Grace, the Na'vi represent humanity's greatest discovery, an intelligent species with a completely different approach to consciousness and connection. She's particularly fascinated by Jake's descriptions of Sahelu, the neural bonds. She explains that this is more than simple biology. The Na'vi's neural cues allow them to form biological neural networks with other creatures and with plants. This means their consciousness can literally expand beyond their own bodies. They don't just communicate with their environment. They merge with it temporarily, experiencing it directly. This, Grace says, is what makes the Na'vi's spiritual beliefs so frustrating to dismiss. They're not speaking metaphorically when they talk about all living things being connected. They're describing actual, measurable, biological connections. Their goddess is the sum total of all life on Pandora, operating as a distributed network consciousness. It's not superstition. It's neuroscience that humans are only beginning to understand. Jake listens to Grace's explanations, trying to absorb concepts that challenge everything he thought he knew about consciousness, intelligence, and life itself. She speaks passionately about the need to protect this, to study it, to learn from it before it's destroyed. But even as she speaks, both of them know that powerful forces want what's beneath Home Tree, and those forces don't particularly care about scientific discoveries or cultural preservation. In his quarters late at night, Jake records his video logs, talking to the camera about his divided existence. During the day, in his avatar body, he's learning to be Na'vi, feeling himself pulled towards their way of life. At night, in his human body, he's reminded that he's here for a corporation, working for people who see Pandora as a resource to be extracted, not a miracle to be understood. He's caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither, and he's not sure how long he can maintain this balance. As the weeks pass, something shifts in Neytiri's attitude toward Jake. The sharp edges of her frustration gradually smooth. She still corrects him constantly, still expects perfection. But there's less anger in it now. Sometimes Jake even catches what might be approval in her expression when he does something correctly. They spend long hours together, moving through the forest, practicing skills, talking in a mixture of Na'vi and English. Neytiri tells him stories about her childhood, about learning to hunt with her father, about the first time she made Zahelu with a creature. Jake shares carefully edited versions of his own life, growing up on Earth, choosing the military, losing the use of his legs. Neytiri struggles to understand his world. She cannot imagine sky so filled with pollution that stars become invisible. Cannot comprehend cities where people live without touching Earth, separated from all growing things. Cannot fathom how humans survive without connection to their environment. Earth, as Jake describes it, sounds like a dying world, sterile and sad. But she's curious about him specifically. She wants to understand why he came here, what he seeks, who he truly is beneath the dreamwalker body he wears. Jake finds himself being more honest with her than he is in his reports to Quaritch or Grace. Something about moving through the forest together, sharing the simple reality of breathing and walking and being present, makes pretense seem unnecessary. One day, Neytiri takes Jake to a place she calls Floating Mountains. They climb higher than Jake has ever been, moving up pathways that wind around massive tree trunks. The air becomes cooler, clearer, and then they emerge above the canopy, and Jake stops breathing. Huge mountains float in the sky above them, suspended by some magnetic force that Jake's scientific mind cannot quite accept, despite seeing it with his own eyes. Waterfalls pour from these floating islands, the water falling thousands of feet to the jungle below. The islands drift slowly, creating ever-changing vistas. Some are close enough to leap between. Others float in the distance, hovering like impossible dreams. Neytiri watches Jake's awe with something almost like affection. She tells him that these sacred places are gifts from Ewa, reminders that the world holds more wonder than anyone can fully understand. The Na'vi come here to find clarity, to remember their place in the vast beauty of existence. They sit together on a branch, legs dangling over the impossible emptiness below, watching the floating mountains drift across Pandora's sky. For a while, neither speaks. The silence is comfortable, shared. Two beings from different worlds, finding common ground in simple wonder. Jake realizes he's happy. Not the forced contentment he tried to feel on Earth. Not the numb acceptance of limitation. Actually happy, filled with a joy that seems to radiate from somewhere deep in his chest. And when he turns to look at Neytiri, he sees she's smiling too, her profile beautiful against the endless blue sky. But happiness makes the divided nature of Jake's existence even more painful. Each evening, when he disconnects from his avatar, the return to his human body feels more like imprisonment. His small quarters on Hell's Gate feel claustrophobic. The recycled air tastes stale. The constant hum of machinery that he'd stopped noticing suddenly seems oppressive. Jake begins to dread the disconnection, to resist waking in his human body. He wants to stay in the avatar, to remain on Pandora, to continue being the person he is when he's with Neytiri and the clan. His human life feels like the dream now, pale and substanceless, compared to the vivid reality of his Na'vi existence. Grace notices the change in him. She sees it in other avatar drivers sometimes, this sense of displacement, of feeling more real in the avatar body than in the original. She warns Jake gently to maintain perspective, to remember that both bodies are his, both lives matter. But even as she says this, her eyes hold understanding. She feels it too, this pull toward Pandora, this sense that humanity's way of existing is somehow lesser than what the Na'vi have achieved. Norm also notices, though his reaction is less sympathetic. He's jealous of Jake's progress with the Na'vi, frustrated that an untrained Marine is achieving what Norm spent years preparing for. The resentment shows in small ways, sharp comments, withheld information, a coolness that wasn't there before. Jake understands it, but can't quite bring himself to care. Norm's academic ambitions seem petty compared to what Jake is experiencing. The person Jake has the hardest time facing is Colonel Quaritch. Each debriefing feels more like betrayal. Jake provides information about Home Tree, about the clan's vulnerabilities, about the places where attack would be most effective. He tells himself he's just answering questions, that knowledge prevents conflict, but he knows what this intelligence will be used for. Quaritch is satisfied with Jake's work. He commends him on gathering actionable intelligence, on infiltrating the Na'vi society, on providing exactly what the military needs to plan their operations. The colonel sees Jake as a successful asset, a soldier doing his job. He has no idea that Jake's heart is no longer in it, that each report feels like tearing pieces from his own soul. Then Jake learns the full truth of why he's really here. In a meeting with Quaritch and the corporate administrator, a man named Parker Selfridge, the plan is laid out explicitly. The richest deposit of unobtainium on Pandora sits directly beneath Home Tree. That location isn't coincidental. The Na'vi built there specifically because the land is sacred, energetically significant in ways their neural connections let them perceive. Selfridge speaks about this in purely economic terms. The unobtainium beneath Home Tree is worth billions, maybe trillions. It's the reason the RDA came to Pandora, the reason they maintain this expensive operation. They've tried negotiating with the Na'vi, offering relocation, promising compensation. The Na'vi refused. They won't leave Home Tree for any price, any offer. So the RDA has a problem. They need what's under that tree. They want to extract it without violence if possible, but they're running out of patience. Jake's intelligence has been useful in planning for various contingencies. If the Na'vi can't be persuaded to leave peacefully, they'll be forced out. The military has the capability. It's simply a matter of corporate authorization. Quaritch adds that the sooner Jake can convince the Na'vi to relocate, the better for everyone. If they leave willingly, no one gets hurt. If they refuse, well, the RDA didn't spend billions establishing this operation to be stopped by indigenous resistance. One way or another, that unobtainium will be extracted. Jake sits in this meeting, hearing these plans laid out so casually, so matter-of-factly, and something inside him breaks. These people are planning to destroy everything. Home Tree, the clan, the entire way of life he's been learning to love. And they're talking about it like it's just business, just numbers on a spreadsheet. He thinks about Neytiri showing him the tree of voices, a face peaceful as she made connection. He thinks about children playing in Home Tree's branches, about families sharing meals, about warriors singing together in the evenings. He thinks about the complex web of life and consciousness that makes Pandora miraculous. And these men want to bulldoze through it all to extract a mineral. After the meeting, Jake goes to Grace. He tells her everything, asks her what he should do. Grace is devastated, but not surprised. She's been fighting this battle for years, watching as corporate interests override scientific concerns, as military force prepares to destroy what should be studied and preserved. She tells Jake he needs to try harder to convince the Na'vi to leave. Not because she wants them displaced, but because the alternative is violence that will accomplish nothing except death. If the Na'vi won't leave, and the RDA won't back down, the result will be tragedy. Maybe if Jake explains the threat clearly enough, the clan will agree to relocate, will accept some compromise that saves lives. But even as she says this, Grace's voice holds doubt. She knows the Na'vi won't leave Home Tree. It's not stubbornness or ignorance. They literally cannot abandon it, any more than humans could abandon their own hearts. Home Tree is central to their existence, their connection to Ewa, their relationship with their ancestors and their land. Asking them to leave is asking them to stop being Na'vi. Jake returns to his avatar that night with a heavy heart, carrying knowledge that weighs like stones in his chest. He's run out of time for the comfortable fiction that he's just learning, just observing, just building bridges. Now he has to make a choice, and every option leads to pain. Neytiri tells Jake that if he wishes to truly become one of the people, he must complete Ignimaya, the test of manhood. This means climbing to the Banshee rookery and bonding with one of these flying creatures, making Tsahelu with the Banshee and proving he can master the bond. The climb alone is terrifying. They scale cliffs near the floating mountains, moving up pathways that are barely ledges, with emptiness falling away on both sides. Jake's avatar body is strong, but his human mind still carries fear of heights, of falling, of the vast space that yawns beneath each step. Neytiri moves ahead confidently, occasionally looking back to make sure he's following, her expression showing that same mix of patience and challenge she always carries. They reach the rookery as the sun is fully up, flooding the floating islands with warm light. Dozens of banshees nest here, creatures the Na'vi call Ikran. They're smaller than the Leonopteryx Jake has seen in the skies, but still massive, with wingspans of 25 feet or more. Their skin shows vibrant colors, deep blues, bright reds, golden yellows, and their heads carry crests like crowns. They hiss and snap at the approaching Na'vi, protective of their territory. Neytiri explains the challenge. Jake must choose a banshee. But more importantly, the banshee must choose him. He must approach one that shows interest, make the bond before it kills him, and then make his first flight. If the bond isn't strong enough, if the connection fails, he'll fall. Many Na'vi have died attempting Ichneumaya. It's not a ceremony. It's a genuine test, where failure means death. Jake moves among the creatures, his heart pounding. Several hiss warnings, others ignore him completely. Then one turns its full attention toward him, a powerful banshee with golden eyes and blue-green skin. It snaps its jaws, showing rows of teeth, challenging him. This, Jake understands, is his match. What follows is a struggle. The banshee fights as Jake tries to get close enough to make the bond. It bites at him, buffets him with its wings, tries to push him toward the cliff edge. Jake holds on grimly, using his strength and his training, refusing to give up even as exhaustion burns through his muscles. Finally, desperately, he manages to connect his cue to the animal's neural tendrils. The bond is immediate and intense. Jake can feel the banshee's fury, its pride, its determination to dominate. But he pushes his own will through the connection, establishing himself not as master, but as partner, as equal. The struggle isn't about force. It's about achieving balance, about creating harmony between two strong wills. The banshee settles. Its breathing slows, and Jake, panting, realizes he's done it. They're bonded. This creature will be his for life, and he will be responsible to it, connected to it through Sahelu, whenever they fly together. Neytiri tells him to fly, now. First flight must happen immediately, before the bond settles into comfortable familiarity. Jake climbs onto the banshee's back, makes the neural connection again, and suddenly he can feel what the creature feels, the wind beneath its wings, the pull of gravity, the exhilaration of potential flight. Together they dive off the cliff, plummeting toward the jungle far below. For a terrible moment, Jake thinks they're falling, dying, that the bond isn't strong enough. Then the banshee's wings catch air, and they're soaring, flying, cutting through the sky in long, glorious arcs that make Jake's heart sing. He can feel the banshee's joy mixing with his own, the pure pleasure the creature takes in flight. They're no longer separate, Jake and banshee, but rather a single entity exploring the sky together. Jake laughs aloud, the sound caught by the wind, and lets his mount carry him through the floating islands, between waterfalls, across vast empty spaces that hold no fear now, only freedom. When they finally land back at the rookery, Neytiri is smiling fully for the first time since Jake met her. She looks at him differently now, not as an annoying burden, not as a clumsy student, but as someone who has proven himself, who has earned respect. She tells him he's done well, and Jake hears the pride in her voice, the acknowledgement that he's crossed some invisible boundary. Word spreads quickly through the clan that the Dreamwalker has completed Ichneumaya. The Na'vi, who had watched Jake with suspicion or amusement, now look at him with new eyes. Children who had kept their distance now approach curiously, asking questions, wanting to hear about his first flight. Warriors nod acknowledgement when he passes. He's still not fully one of them, but he's closer, accepted in ways that seemed impossible when he first arrived. Tsute, a powerful young warrior who's never hidden his dislike of Jake, remains hostile. Tsute was supposed to be Neytiri's mate. a arrangement made by their families when they were young. He resents Jake's presence, resents the attention Neytiri gives to teaching this sky person, resents how Jake is being integrated into clan life. Their interactions carry tension that sometimes threatens to spill into open conflict. But even Tsute cannot deny that Jake has met the requirements of manhood. The test doesn't lie. Either you bond with a banshee and survive the first flight, or you die. Jake survived, which means Ewa accepted him, which means he's earned the right to be here, regardless of anyone's personal feelings. Etukan, the clan leader, speaks with Jake that evening. He asks Jake about his intentions, whether he truly wishes to become Na'vi, or if this is just curiosity, just temporary adventure. Jake struggles to answer honestly. He can't explain that he was sent here to spy, that his presence has darker purposes. But he can say truthfully that he's come to love this life, this world, these people, that what started as assignment has become something much deeper. Etukan studies him with eyes that seem to see past words to the truth beneath. Then he places a hand on Jake's shoulder, a gesture of acceptance, of welcome. He tells Jake that the path ahead will demand much, that choosing to be Na'vi means leaving behind who you were before, that such transformations are never simple or painless. But if Jake's heart is true, if his commitment is real, then the people will accept him fully. That night, there's a celebration. The clan gathers around a great fire in Home Tree, singing songs that have been passed down through generations. The music is complex, voices weaving together in harmonies that seem to embody the forest itself. Jake sits among them, trying to follow the melodies, understanding perhaps one word in 5, but feeling the emotion perfectly clear. Young Na'vi dance around the fire, their movements graceful and meaningful, telling stories through their bodies. Others play instruments made from wood and shells and stretched hide, creating rhythms that pulse like heartbeats. The celebration is simultaneously joyful and sacred, honoring both the success of Jake's Ichneumaya and the traditions that make such tests meaningful. Neytiri dances, and Jake cannot look away. She moves with complete freedom, her body telling stories of flight and forest, of connection and courage. When she catches him watching, she doesn't look away or seem embarrassed. Instead, she gestures for him to join. Jake hesitates. He's never been a dancer, even in his human body. But Neytiri's invitation isn't really a question, so he stands and moves into the circle. He's clumsy at first, uncertain, his avatar body responding awkwardly to rhythms he doesn't fully understand. But Neytiri stays close, guiding him, showing him basic movements, encouraging him to stop thinking and simply feel the music. Gradually, Jake stops caring about looking foolish. He lets the rhythm enter his body, lets himself move without self-consciousness, lets joy override judgment. Dancing together around the fire, moving in time with the ancient songs, Jake feels something shift inside himself. He's not pretending to be Na'vi anymore. He's not playing a role or gathering intelligence. In this moment, dancing with Neytiri while the clan sings, he simply is what he is. Someone who belongs here, whose heart has found home in a place his body wasn't born. Later, when the celebration winds down and people begin settling for the night, Neytiri takes Jake outside Home Tree. They walk through the glowing forest, following familiar paths, not talking much. The bioluminescent plants light their way with soft blues and greens. Somewhere distant, a creature calls into the night. Pandora breathes around them, alive and welcoming. They reach a quiet place where a stream flows over smooth stones. Neytiri sits, and Jake settles beside her. For a long while, they simply exist together in comfortable silence. Then Neytiri speaks softly in Na'vi, words Jake has learned well enough to understand. She says she's glad he came, that she was wrong to judge him so harshly, that he's shown courage and heart. Jake replies in halting Na'vi that he's grateful for her patience, for her teaching, for helping him become someone better than who he was. The words are simple, inadequate for expressing what he truly feels. But Neytiri seems to understand. She looks at him with an expression that holds warmth, acceptance, and something more, something that makes Jake's heart beat faster. The romantic connection between Jake and Neytiri grows naturally, without dramatics or grand declarations. It's built from countless small moments, shared glances, hands touching briefly, the comfort of silence between people who understand each other. They spend their days together, moving through the forest on tasks both practical and educational. Neytiri continues teaching Jake the skills he needs to survive and thrive on Pandora. Jake continues learning, but now there's playfulness in their interactions, laughter mixed with the lessons, a lightness that wasn't there before. One afternoon, hunting together, Jake makes a successful shot with his bow, bringing down a yerrick, a hexapod deer-like creature. Neytiri's face shows genuine pride as she watches him perform the ritual thanks to the animal, acknowledging its sacrifice, promising to use its gift well. She tells him he's become a hunter, a true Na'vi warrior. The way she looks at him when she says this communicates more than her words do. They're alone together more often now, seeking each other's company without anyone needing to assign them as partners. Other clan members notice but don't interfere. Tsute notices too, his resentment growing sharper. But even he cannot deny that Neytiri has made her choice clear through her actions. One evening, Neytiri takes Jake to a sacred place she's never shown anyone before. A grove where the trees grow in perfect spirals, where the bioluminescence is so bright that night becomes like gentle day. She tells him that her people believe places like this are where Awa's presence is strongest, where the network of consciousness becomes almost visible. They sit together, surrounded by this beauty, and Neytiri speaks softly about her life, her fears, her dreams. She tells Jake that she was angry when her mother assigned her to teach him because she didn't want to waste time on a sky person, didn't want to care about someone who would eventually leave. But she didn't expect him to truly understand, to genuinely embrace the Na'vi way, to become someone her heart would recognize as kin. Jake tells her truthfully that he never expected to find home here, that he came to Pandora lost, broken, looking for nothing except escape from his own emptiness. But this world, this clan, and especially Neytiri herself, have shown him what life can be, what connection truly means. Their faces are close now, lit by the gentle glow of the forest around them. Neytiri reaches out, touching Jake's face with careful fingers, tracing the strong lines of his jaw, the shape of his eyes. She tells him in Na'vi that she sees him, truly sees him, all that he is, and all that he might become. Jake responds with the same phrase, in Na'vi words that have become as natural as breathing. Oil ngati kame. I see you, not just your surface, not just your actions. I see your spirit, your truth, your heart. They come together gently, kissing in the way of the Na'vi, which is more than physical. It's connection, acknowledgement, a beginning of something deeper. Time slows around them. The forest seems to brighten, as if responding to their emotion. And in that moment, Jake knows with absolute certainty that this is where he belongs, with this person, in this world, forever. That night, they make the permanent bond that mates share, connecting their neural cues to each other, experiencing Sahelu between two Na'vi for the first time. For Jake, the connection is overwhelming. He can feel Neytiri's emotions as if they're his own, her thoughts brushing against his consciousness like gentle fingers. They're separate beings who choose in this moment to merge, to share everything, to become as close to one entity as two individuals can be. Afterward, lying together beneath Pandora's stars, Neytiri speaks softly about the significance of what they've done. Among the Na'vi, mating is for life. The bond they've made is permanent, recognized by Ewa and the entire clan. They're no longer separate individuals, but a mated pair, responsible to and for each other, connected in ways that will last until death. Jake holds her, feeling the absolute rightness of this choice, knowing he would make it again without hesitation. All the complications of his situation, his human body, his divided loyalties, the secrets he's been keeping, fade into insignificance compared to this simple truth. He loves Neytiri, and she loves him, and they've chosen each other completely. But reality cannot be postponed forever. The next morning, when Jake reluctantly disconnects from his avatar and returns to his human body, he finds Hell's Gate in a state of heightened activity. Something is happening, something that makes military personnel move with urgent purpose. Colonel Quaritch summons Jake immediately. In the briefing room, a large holographic display shows Home Tree from multiple angles, marked with tactical notations. Selfridge is there too, looking uncomfortable but determined. Grace is present as well, her face tight with anger. Quaritch explains the situation directly. Negotiations with the Na'vi have failed. The clan refuses to relocate, refuses even to discuss alternatives. Corporate headquarters has authorized military action. In 3 days, they're going to use force to remove the Na'vi from Home Tree. If the clan leaves willingly in that time frame, they'll be allowed to go peacefully. If not, the RDA will deploy sufficient force to ensure evacuation. Jake hears this information like a physical blow. He tries to argue, to suggest more time for negotiations, to propose alternative approaches. Quaritch cuts him off. This isn't a debate. The decision has been made at levels far above anyone in this room. They're informing Jake as a courtesy, because his intelligence helped shape the tactical plan. Grace is furious, arguing passionately that this is genocide, that destroying Home Tree will devastate the Na'vi culturally and spiritually. She brings up her research, her data about the neural networks, the scientific value of what will be lost. Selfridge listens with obvious discomfort, but shakes his head. He's under pressure from corporate, from investors, from financial realities that don't care about culture or science. They need that unobtainium, and they need it now. Jake's mind races. He thinks about Neytiri sleeping peacefully in their shared space in Home Tree, trusting him, loving him, having no idea what's coming. He thinks about the children, the families, the warriors who've begun accepting him. He thinks about Etukan and Moat, who gave him a chance when they had every reason to refuse. He thinks about the entire intricate web of life that centers around Home Tree, about to be shattered by machines and explosives. Quaritch continues with the tactical briefing, explaining the assault plan in clinical detail. They'll use intimidation first. a show of force designed to convince the Na'vi that resistance is futile. If that doesn't work, they'll escalate to direct action. The goal is to minimize casualties while achieving the objective of clearing the area. It's all very professional, very military, very divorced from the reality of what it means to destroy people's homes and lives. Jake leaves the meeting in a daze. Grace catches up with him in the corridor, gripping his arm urgently. She tells him he has to warn them, has to convince the Na'vi to leave before the military comes. It's their only chance. If they evacuate Home Tree voluntarily, at least they'll survive. At least they can relocate somewhere safe. But Jake knows the truth that Grace is trying not to acknowledge. The Na'vi won't leave. They can't leave. Home Tree isn't just shelter. It's the center of their spiritual life, the place where they connect with their ancestors, the physical manifestation of their bond with Ewa. Asking them to abandon it is like asking them to stop breathing. Still, he has to try. He has no other option. Jake returns to his link unit, his hands shaking as the technicians prepare the connection. When he opens his eyes in his avatar body, it's late afternoon on Pandora. Neytiri is there, smiling at him, reaching out to touch his face in greeting. The gesture breaks his heart. Jake asks Neytiri to gather the clan's leaders. He needs to speak with them about something important, something urgent. Neytiri sees the tension in his expression, and her smile fades. She asks what's wrong, but Jake just repeats that he needs to address the clan. Now. Within the hour, the leaders are assembled. Etukan, Moat, Tsute, and the other warriors and elders who guide the Omaticaya. They gather in a central space within Home Tree, seated in a circle, waiting to hear what this new member of their clan needs to say. Neytiri sits beside Jake, her hand on his arm, offering support for whatever burden he's carrying. Jake begins speaking in Na'vi, his words halting but clear enough. He tells them about the humans' plans, about the unobtainium beneath Home Tree, about the corporation's determination to mine it, regardless of the cost, about the military force that will come in 3 days if the clan doesn't evacuate voluntarily. The reaction is immediate and intense. Warriors leap to their feet, shouting in outrage. Etukan demands to know how Jake has this information. Tsute accuses him of being a spy, of infiltrating their clan to gather intelligence for the Sky People's attack. The calm of the gathering dissolves into chaos and anger. Jake tries to explain. He says he came here originally to learn about them, yes, but that he's changed, that his loyalties have changed, that he's warning them now precisely because he's become one of them. He says they need to leave Home Tree temporarily, find somewhere safe, avoid the violence that's coming. They can return after, can negotiate, can find some solution, but first they must survive. Moat's voice cuts through the noise, silencing everyone. She stands, approaching Jake slowly, her expression terrible in its disappointment. She says that she suspected this, that some part of her always knew the Dreamwalker carried divided intentions. She took him in anyway, hoping he would prove true. Now he reveals himself as exactly what Tsute claimed, a spy for the Sky People, someone who gained their trust only to betray it. Jake desperately tries to make them understand. He says he's not betraying them, he's trying to save them. The military force is overwhelming. Fighting will only result in death. If they leave peacefully, at least everyone survives. He knows what he's asking is terrible, but it's the only way to prevent massacre. Neytiri is silent, her face showing the slow realization of what Jake's words mean. He was sent here to spy. Everything she thought they built together started as deception. She looks at him with an expression that holds betrayal so profound it's almost physical. Jake reaches for her, trying to explain, trying to make her understand that his feelings became real even if his initial purpose was false. She pulls away from him violently, spitting words in Na'vi that need no translation. The love in her eyes has transformed to something else. Hurt, rage, profound disappointment. She trusted him completely, opened her heart to him, made the eternal bond with him. And he was deceiving her from the beginning. Etukan makes a decision quickly. He orders the warriors to bind Jake, to hold him as prisoner. The clan will not leave Home Tree. They will not abandon their home because the Sky People demand it. If the humans want to attack, they will find the Na'vi ready to defend what is theirs. Jake struggles as warriors grab him, still trying to reason, to explain, to make them see that courage won't stop missiles and bullets. But no one is listening anymore. To them, he's revealed himself as exactly what they feared. A weapon sent by the Sky People to undermine them from within. Tsutei is particularly brutal, striking Jake hard enough to knock him down, speaking words of disgust and hatred. This outsider came into their clan, learned their ways, took Neytiri as his mate, all while serving the humans who want to destroy them. It's the deepest possible betrayal, and Tsutei's anger speaks for the entire clan's sense of violation. Moat approaches Jake, where he's held on the ground. She tells him that he will be held until the clan decides his fate, that the bond between him and Neytiri is broken by his deception, that he is no longer welcome among the people, no longer considered one of them. Everything he earned through his trials means nothing now, because it was all built on lies. Jake sees Neytiri standing apart, tears streaming down her face, her expression broken. He calls to her, trying to apologize, trying to explain. She doesn't respond, doesn't even look at him. The connection they shared feels severed, not just emotionally, but almost physically, like something has been cut away, leaving only raw wound. The warriors drag Jake to a small enclosed space at the edge of Home Tree, a place where they keep prisoners or isolate the dangerously ill. They bind his hands and feet, securing him so he can't escape. Then they leave him there, in darkness, alone, with the knowledge of what he's done, and what's coming. Jake sits in that darkness for hours, his mind racing through possibilities, through regrets, through desperate attempts to find some solution. He thinks about disconnecting, returning to his human body, maybe trying to sabotage the military operation from inside Hell's Gate. But he knows Quaritch would never let him interfere, would probably imprison him if he tried. He thinks about Neytiri's face when she understood his betrayal. That image is worse than any physical pain, worse than imprisonment, worse than the prospect of dying. He's hurt the person he loves most, destroyed the trust they built, shattered something precious beyond measure, and he has no way to fix it. As night deepens, Jake hears sounds outside Home Tree. The approaching thrum of helicopters, the mechanical whine of AMP suits, the organized movement of military forces taking position. His warning came too late. The humans are here already, arrived early, unwilling to wait the promised 3 days. Massive spotlights suddenly illuminate Home Tree, turning night into harsh, artificial day. Speakers blare demands in English and halting Na'vi. Evacuate immediately. Leave the area. Resistance will be met with force. The voice is Quaritch's, amplified to carry across the entire vicinity. The clan responds with defiance. Warriors emerge from Home Tree, bows drawn, shouting challenges. A toucan stands at the forefront, refusing to be intimidated by the machines and weapons arrayed against his people. The Na'vi greatly outnumber the human force. But Jake knows numbers mean nothing against the technology the RDA brought. From his prison space, Jake can hear everything, but see nothing. He struggles against his bonds, desperate to do something, anything. He shouts warnings that no one can hear over the chaos outside, his voice drowned by the noise of military equipment and Na'vi war cries. There's a brief, tense standoff. Quaritch issues a final warning. Leave now or face the consequences. A toucan responds by firing an arrow that bounces harmlessly off an AMP suit's armor. It's a symbolic gesture, a refusal to submit, and it seals Home Tree's fate. What happens next is systematic and brutal. The military doesn't attack the Na'vi directly. Instead, they target Home Tree itself. Incendiary rounds strike the massive tree's base, igniting fires that spread rapidly through the ancient wood. Explosives are deployed at strategic points, weakening the structural integrity that has held for thousands of years. Jake hears Home Tree groaning, a sound like the world itself mourning. He feels the vibrations through the floor as explosives detonate. Smoke begins filtering into his prison space, making breathing difficult. The Na'vi are screaming now, no longer war cries, but sounds of terror and grief as they realize their home is dying. Someone opens Jake's prison, a Na'vi warrior he doesn't recognize, moving frantically, releasing prisoners not out of mercy, but out of desperate need for everyone to evacuate. Jake stumbles out into chaos. Home Tree is ablaze, its interior filling with smoke and flames. Families run in all directions, grabbing children, trying to save sacred objects, moving toward exits that are already blocked by fire. Jake pushes through the chaos, searching for Neytiri. He helps where he can, pulling children away from flames, directing people toward safer routes. Some Na'vi recognize him and attack, but most are too focused on survival to care about settling scores. The tree groans again, louder, a sound that Jake feels in his bones. Then he sees her, Neytiri, helping her mother guide a group of elders toward an exit. Jake shouts her name, moving toward her. She looks up, sees him, and for a moment their eyes meet across the burning space. Her expression holds everything: love, hate, grief, betrayal, all mixed together in proportions Jake can't separate. But there's no time for reconciliation or recrimination. Home Tree is collapsing. The structural damage has reached critical levels. Jake can hear Quaritch's voice over speakers, ordering all human forces to pull back to safe distance, which means the end is seconds away. The collapse happens with terrible majesty. First, there's a sound like thunder, but deeper, more primal. The sound of something ancient and alive dying. The massive trunk begins to lean, slowly at first, then faster. Thousands of years of growth, countless generations of Na'vi life, all the memories and connections held in that living wood, all of it falling. Jake runs, grabbing any Na'vi he can reach, pushing them toward open ground away from the tree's falling path. Debris rains down around them, burning branches, pieces of the homes people built, sacred objects tumbling through smoke-filled air. The ground shakes with impacts. The air fills with a roar that drowns out even the screaming. Neytiri is running too, her mother beside her, both of them helping others evacuate. Jake sees a toucan moving through the chaos like a warrior to the end, ensuring his people escape even as his home falls around him. The chief shouts orders, directs the panicked crowd. maintain some semblance of organized retreat, even in the face of catastrophe. Then Home Tree hits the ground. The impact is seismic. Jake is thrown off his feet by the shockwave. A wall of dust and smoke erupts outward, blinding everyone, choking lungs, making it impossible to see. For long moments, there's only chaos, the sound of destruction, the taste of ash, the feeling of the world ending. When the dust begins to settle, when Jake can breathe again more and see through the haze, the sight before him is devastating. Home Tree lies in ruins, its massive trunk shattered, its branches scattered across acres of ground. Small fires still burn throughout the wreckage, and everywhere Na'vi people wander stunned, searching for family members, calling names, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. The casualties become clear gradually as survivors gather and take count. Many Na'vi died in the collapse, crushed by falling debris, trapped in spaces that became infernos, unable to escape quickly enough. Bodies lie among the ruins, and the sounds of grief fill the air as family members discover their losses. A toucan is among the dead. Jake learns this from the wailing that erupts from a group of Na'vi gathered around a particular spot in the wreckage. Neytiri's voice rises above the others, a sound of such pure anguish that it tears through Jake's heart. She's kneeling beside her father's body, Moat beside her, both of them bent in grief that seems to have physical weight. Jake approaches slowly, unsure if his presence will be welcome or provoke violence. But in this moment of overwhelming loss, the Na'vi seem beyond caring about revenge. They're focused entirely on their dead, on their destroyed home, on trying to process trauma that has shattered their world. Moat looks up as Jake approaches. Her face is streaked with ash and tears, aged decades in a single night. She doesn't speak, doesn't acknowledge him beyond that single glance. She returns her attention to her mate's body, to the impossible task of saying goodbye to someone who was supposed to be there forever. Neytiri won't look at Jake at all. She stays bent over her father, speaking softly in Na'vi, words that might be prayer or simply conversation with someone who can no longer hear. Her grief is absolute, all-consuming, and Jake knows that his betrayal is woven into it inextricably. He helped cause this. His intelligence, his reports, his role in the human operation, all of it contributed to this moment. The surviving Na'vi begin the painful work of organizing themselves. With Etukan dead and Home Tree destroyed, the clan structure is shattered. Tsute, as the most senior warrior, takes temporary leadership, directing people to gather the wounded, to collect what supplies can be salvaged, to prepare to move away from this place of death. The human forces have withdrawn, their mission accomplished. Home Tree is destroyed. The Na'vi are displaced. The area around the unobtainium deposit is now clear for mining operations. From the RDA's perspective, this is a successful operation with acceptable losses. They'll file reports noting minimal human casualties and regrettable but necessary indigenous displacement. But for the Na'vi, everything has ended. Their home, their center, their connection to ancestors, all gone. They're refugees now in their own land, displaced people who must find somewhere else to live. Some way to rebuild what seems irreparably broken. As the clan prepares to leave the ruins of Home Tree, moving toward a temporary sanctuary into the forest, Jake tries to speak with Neytiri. He approaches carefully, staying at a respectful distance, his voice gentle as he says her name. She turns to him slowly. Her face is empty of the anger he expected. Instead, there's something worse, a complete absence of feeling, a hollowness that suggests she has nothing left inside to give him, not even hatred. Jake tries to explain again. He says he warned them, tried to prevent this, that he came to love her and the people truly, that he never wanted any of this to happen. The words sound pathetic, even to him, inadequate justifications for betrayal and death. Neytiri speaks finally, her voice flat, empty. She tells him that he is not one of the people, that he never was, despite the ceremonies, despite the training, despite the bond they made. She says that bonds made under deception are not true bonds, that everything between them was built on lies, and now it's destroyed as surely as Home Tree itself. She tells him to go back to his own kind, the Sky people who destroy everything they touch, that he doesn't belong here among the Na'vi, that she never wants to see him again. The words are delivered without emotion, which makes them cut deeper than anger would have. Jake reaches toward her, trying to bridge the distance between them. Neytiri steps back, refusing his touch, refusing any connection. She looks at him one final time, and Jake sees in her eyes the death of everything they shared. Then she turns and walks away, joining her people as they move toward the forest, leaving him standing alone among the ruins. Na'vi warriors, acting on Sute's orders, force Jake to disconnect from his avatar. They bind the avatar body and leave it among the wreckage, ensuring he can't follow them. When Jake wakes in his human body at Hell's Gate, he's immediately taken into custody by base security. Quaritch is furious. He accuses Jake of compromising the operation by warning the Na'vi of divided loyalties, of being more concerned with indigenous welfare than mission objectives. Jake doesn't deny any of it. He's past pretending, past trying to justify himself to people who see Pandora's inhabitants as obstacles rather than people. Grace is imprisoned too, along with several other scientists who voiced opposition to the Home Tree destruction. Selfridge has sided fully with the military now, accepting Quaritch's recommendation that dissenters be detained to prevent interference with mining operations. The base is under effective martial law, with the colonel controlling who moves where and what information flows in or out. Jake sits in his cell, his human body feeling more cage-like than ever after experiencing freedom in his avatar. His legs are dead weight as always, useless reminders of limitation. He can't fly on his banshee anymore, can't move through the forest with Neytiri, can't even stand without mechanical assistance. He's back to being the broken person he was when he first arrived on Pandora. Except now he knows exactly what he's lost. Grace is in the next cell, and they can talk through the barrier. She's devastated by what happened, blaming herself for not fighting harder against corporate interests, for believing scientific appeals might overcome economic incentives. She tells Jake that what the RDA did constitutes genocide, deliberately destroying a culture's center, killing civilians, displacing indigenous people from their land. It's everything humans promised they'd never do again after Earth's own dark history. But the worst part, Grace says, is that it was all unnecessary. Her research showed that Pandora's neural network is more sophisticated than any computer system humans have built. The trees, the plants, the entire ecosystem operates as a biological supercomputer, storing information, processing it, learning. If humans had approached the Na'vi as partners rather than obstacles, they might have gained access to knowledge and technology that transcends anything in human experience. Instead, they chose destruction. And now, they'll strip mine the land, extract their unobtainium, leave Pandora scarred and diminished, having learned nothing except that superior firepower allows you to take what you want, regardless of the cost to others. Jake listens to Grace's words, understanding the truth in them, feeling the weight of his own complicity. He provided intelligence that made the attack more effective. He gained the Na'vi's trust, specifically to betray it. No matter how real his feelings became, no matter how sincerely he tried to warn them at the end, the foundation of everything was deception. 2 days into their imprisonment, an opportunity emerges. Some of the Avatar drivers and scientists who weren't detained feel the same outrage that Grace and Jake do. They coordinate quietly, planning a rescue that will free the prisoners and give them a chance to make things right, or at least try. Trudy Chacon, one of the helicopter pilots who's always questioned the military's approach, is central to the plan. She commandeers a Samson helicopter and stages a distraction that draws security away from the detention area. In the chaos, Max and Norm, Avatar technicians sympathetic to Grace's position, break open the cells and rush Jake and Grace towards the landing pad. Quaritch realizes what's happening and responds immediately. He leads a squad of soldiers to intercept the escapees. Gunfire erupts as Grace, Jake, and their rescuers run for the waiting helicopter. Trudy provides covering fire from the Samson's guns, buying them precious seconds. They're almost to the helicopter when the shot comes. Grace cries out and stumbles, her hand going to her side where blood blooms dark against her shirt. Jake catches her, supporting her weight, dragging her the final distance to the helicopter. Norm and Max help pull them both aboard as Trudy lifts off immediately, bullets pinging against the Samson's armor. Grace is bleeding badly. The bullet hit her in the abdomen, a wound that's serious even with immediate medical attention. They have basic supplies on the helicopter, but nothing approaching what she needs. She's going into shock, her skin pale, her breathing shallow. Trudy flies them away from Hell's Gate, toward the coordinates where Grace says the Na'vi might have taken refuge. It's their only chance. The human base won't treat Grace now, not after she escaped custody. Their only hope is finding the Na'vi, convincing them to help despite everything that's happened. Jake holds Grace, applying pressure to her wound, talking to her constantly to keep her conscious. She's drifting in and out of awareness, speaking in fragments about her research, about Pandora, about regrets. She tells Jake that he needs to convince the Na'vi to fight back, that humanity's aggression won't stop with Home Tree, that eventually the RDA will consume everything unless someone stands against them. Jake promises he'll try, though he has no idea how. The Na'vi have every reason to reject him, to refuse any help or alliance. But Grace is right. Doing nothing means watching Pandora die slowly under human exploitation. If there's any chance of changing that outcome, Jake has to take it. They find the Na'vi clan at a temporary camp near the Tree of Souls, a sacred place even more important to the Na'vi than Home Tree was. When Trudy lands the helicopter, warriors immediately surround it, weapons drawn. They see Jake and recognize him, their expressions hostile. Jake climbs out carefully, his hands raised, calling out in Na'vi that he needs help, that Grace is wounded and dying, that he knows he has no right to ask anything from them, but he's asking anyway, because there's no one else, nowhere else, to turn. Tsute approaches, his face set in hard lines. He demands to know why he shouldn't kill Jake, where he stands. Jake responds honestly. He has no good reason except that killing him won't undo what's been done, and Grace might be saved if they act quickly. Moat appears then, moving through the gathered warriors. She looks at Grace, sees the blood, understands the severity of the wound. Despite everything, despite all the pain humans have caused, Moat's role as Tsahik means she cannot ignore suffering. She orders warriors to bring Grace carefully, to carry her to the Tree of Souls. Neytiri is there, standing apart from the group, watching Jake with an expression he can't read. Their eyes meet briefly, and Jake sees the conflict in her face, the lingering hurt, the anger, but also something else. Some remaining ember of what they shared. She doesn't speak, doesn't approach, but she doesn't look away either. They carry Grace to the Tree of Souls, a place of profound sacred significance. The tree is smaller than Home Tree, but older, its roots delving deep into Pandora's crust, its tendrils hanging like curtains of light. This is where the Na'vi make their deepest connections to Ewa, where the planetary consciousness is most accessible. Moat attempts something unprecedented. She tries to transfer Grace's consciousness from her human body into her avatar body, just as avatars are normally controlled through the neural link. But this would be permanent, a complete transfer of Grace's essential self from one body to another. It requires Ewa's acceptance, requires the entire neural network to facilitate a transition that may not even be possible. The clan gathers around Grace's human body, connecting their cues to the Tree of Souls, adding their consciousness to the collective effort. They sing together, their voices creating harmonies that seem to resonate with Pandora itself. Moat leads the ceremony, speaking to Ewa, asking for this miracle, pleading for intervention. Jake watches, holding Grace's hand, praying to a force he barely understands to save someone who tried to bridge the gap between worlds. Grace's eyes open briefly, looking at Jake with clarity despite her pain. She tells him she can see it, the network, the connections, everything she studied becoming visible, accessible. She says it's beautiful, more than she ever imagined. Then her eyes close, her breathing stops, and despite all the prayers, all the connections, all the hope channeled through the Tree of Souls, Grace's consciousness slips away. Ewa could not or would not make the transfer. Grace dies in her human body, her avatar body remaining empty, and another loss adds to the Na'vi's grief. Moat speaks the truth, sadly. Ewa does not take sides in conflicts between species. Ewa protects the balance of Pandora, but does not intervene in the choices that individuals or groups make. Grace was trying to help the Na'vi, but she was also human, and her death is part of the larger tragedy of humans coming to Pandora. Jake feels Grace's death like another weight added to the load he's already carrying. She tried to do right, tried to protect what she studied, tried to bridge two worlds, and she died because of conflicts she worked her entire life to prevent. Her death seems pointless, wasteful, another casualty of human short-sightedness and greed. But in his grief, something crystallizes for Jake. He can't undo his betrayal. He can't bring back the people who died when Home Tree fell. He can't resurrect Grace or Etukan, or any of the others lost to human aggression. But he can choose what happens next. He can decide which side he's truly on, not in words, but in actions that might actually matter. He speaks to the gathered Na'vi, his voice carrying across the assembled clan. He tells them that more humans will come, that the destruction of Home Tree was only the beginning. The RDA won't stop until they've taken everything Pandora has to offer, until the forests are gone, and the sacred places destroyed, and the Na'vi reduced to scattered refugees with nowhere left to run. But, Jake continues, they can fight back. The Na'vi know this land in ways humans never will. They're connected to Pandora's ecosystem, able to move through it with grace and intelligence that no amount of human technology can match. If they organize, if they resist, if they refuse to let Pandora be destroyed without an busted fight, they might have a chance. Tsute responds with scorn. He says Jake has no right to speak of fighting, having already proven himself a coward and traitor, that his words mean nothing, that he should leave and never return. But Jake doesn't leave. Instead, he makes a proposal. He says he'll prove himself. He'll do something no Na'vi has done in living memory, something that will demonstrate his commitment beyond any possible doubt. He'll seek out and bond with the Torok, the Leonopteryx that the Na'vi call Last Shadow, the great predator that rules Pandora's skies. Any Na'vi who rides Torok becomes Torok Makto, a legendary warrior who commands respect from all clans. The gathered Na'vi react with shock. Torok is feared even among Na'vi, a creature so powerful that attempting to bond with it is effectively suicide. Only 5 times in all of Na'vi history has anyone succeeded in becoming Torok Makto, and those who did achieved legendary status. But Jake is determined. He says that if he succeeds, the Na'vi will know his commitment is real, that he'll have proven himself willing to risk everything for Pandora. And if he fails, if Torok kills him, then the problem of Jake Sully resolves itself, and the Na'vi can forget he ever existed. Jake's human body remains at the Tree of Souls, protected by Norm and the other human allies who chose to side with the Na'vi. When he enters his avatar body, Trudy flies him to the floating mountains where Torok nests. She's terrified for him, but also inspired by his determination, by this desperate attempt to make amends for his betrayal. Finding Torok isn't difficult. The creature is massive, its wingspan exceeding any other flying animal on Pandora. It perches on one of the largest floating mountains, its scales shimmering red and orange and gold in the sunlight. When it notices Jake's banshee approaching, it immediately gives chase, seeing the smaller flying creature as prey or intruder in its territory. What follows is a harrowing aerial chase. Jake's banshee flies desperately through the floating mountains, weaving between islands, diving through waterfalls, trying to evade the massive predator pursuing them. Torok is faster, more powerful, its calls echoing across the sky like thunder. Jake remembers something Neytiri taught him, that to bond with a banshee, you must approach from an angle they cannot see, from their blind spot. Torok has the same vulnerability. Rather than fleeing, Jake suddenly turns and dives, guiding his banshee directly toward Torok, approaching from above and behind, where the great creature cannot easily track him. It's the most dangerous thing Jake has ever done. Torok snaps and twists, trying to catch this audacious attacker. Jake leaps from his banshee onto Torok's back, his cue immediately seeking the neural connection. For terrifying seconds, Torok bucks and spins, trying to throw him off, and Jake clings desperately to the creature's scales. Then the connection is made, the bond forms, and suddenly Jake can feel Torok's consciousness, ancient, proud, powerful beyond anything he's experienced. The creature could still throw him off, could refuse the bond. But Jake pushes his will through the connection, not as domination, but as request, as partnership, as alliance. Torok settles. The bond holds, and Jake finds himself flying the most powerful creature on Pandora, feeling its strength beneath him, its wings catching air with effortless power. He's become Torok Makto, Last Shadow Rider, a warrior of legend. Flying back to the Tree of Souls on Torok is transcendent. The other flying creatures scatter before them, recognizing Toruk's dominance. The ground-dwelling animals pause in their movements, sensing something significant passing overhead. Even Pandora itself seems to acknowledge what's happened. A new Toruk Makto has emerged at a time when the Na'vi desperately need leadership. When Jake lands at the Tree of Souls, the gathered Na'vi fall silent. Every eye is on Toruk, on the massive predator settling peacefully, on Jake climbing down from its back. This is legend made real, prophecy fulfilled, a sign that even the most skeptical cannot dismiss. Tsute approaches slowly, his expression showing awe mixed with lingering resentment. By Na'vi tradition, Toruk Makto commands respect from all warriors, all clans. Even Tsute must acknowledge this. He kneels before Jake, head bowed, accepting Jake's right to lead. The other warriors follow, one by one, kneeling in recognition. Moat watches with an expression that might be satisfaction or simply acceptance of Ewa's will. And Neytiri stands apart, her face showing complex emotions: pride, grief, lingering hurt, and perhaps the first stirrings of forgiveness. Jake speaks to the assembled clan, his voice carrying authority that wasn't there before. He says that he comes to them as Toruk Makto, asking them to hear his words and consider his plan. The humans will not stop with Home Tree's destruction. They'll continue mining, continue expanding, continue destroying until Pandora is stripped bare. The Na'vi can either accept this fate or they can fight. But, Jake continues, the Omaticaya alone cannot win. They need numbers. They need all the clans united in common cause. This is why Toruk Makto exists, to call the clans together in times of great threat, to lead them into battle against enemies that no single clan can defeat alone. He proposes sending riders to all the clans, the horse clans of the plains, the Ikran clans of the eastern mountains, the Taukame, who dwell near water. Every Na'vi clan should be told about Home Tree's destruction, should understand the threat humans pose, should be asked to join in defending Pandora itself. Tsute speaks then, his voice rough but determined. He says that if Jake truly leads this fight, if he stands with the Na'vi against the Sky People, then Tsute will follow. That personal grievances mean nothing compared to the survival of the people. He swears his loyalty to Toruk Makto, and his warriors echo the vow. Mohat adds her support, saying that Ewa has shown signs, the seeds that landed on Jake when Neytiri first found him, his success in bonding with Toruk, his willingness to stand with the Na'vi, even against his own kind. These are not coincidences. They are guidance, showing that Jake's path leads here to this moment, regardless of how it began. Neytiri finally approaches Jake, and the gathered clan falls silent, watching this reunion. She looks at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she speaks softly in Na'vi, telling him that she sees him, sees his regret, his determination, his commitment to making things right. The bond between them was damaged, but perhaps not irreparably broken. If he fights truly, if he stands with her people against the Sky People's aggression, then perhaps trust can be rebuilt. Jake responds with the same phrase, telling her he sees her pain, sees the courage it takes to consider forgiving him. He doesn't ask for immediate reconciliation. He simply accepts her conditions, that actions must speak louder than words, that trust must be earned rather than given. The riders go out across Pandora, carrying Jake's message to the scattered clans. The response is remarkable. Clan after clan agrees to gather, to hear Toruk Makto speak, to consider united action. The destruction of Home Tree has awakened all Na'vi to the existential threat humans represent. If the RDA can destroy the Omatakaya's home so easily, no clan is safe. Within days, thousands of Na'vi warriors gather at the Tree of Souls. They come on dire horses and parley, on banshees that fill the sky with color, on foot through trails only the Na'vi know. The plain around the Tree of Souls becomes a vast encampment of different clans, each with their own colors, their own customs, their own warriors eager to defend their world. Jake addresses them from a high place, where all can see Toruk perched beside him. He speaks in Na'vi, his words carrying across the assembled thousands. He tells them about the Sky People's intentions, about the destruction that will continue unless they stand together. He acknowledges his own role in the betrayal, accepting responsibility, but argues that his past mistakes are less important than what they choose to do now. The clans listen, and though some murmur skeptically, most are moved by his words, and by the simple fact that Toruk Makto stands before them. The great creature's presence validates Jake's leadership in ways that no speech could accomplish alone. Tsute speaks next, supporting Jake's call to war, describing the horror of Home Tree's fall, honoring those who died. His voice carries the weight of personal loss and righteous anger. The warriors respond with calls of agreement, with weapons raised, with determination hardening into collective purpose. Mohat performs ceremonies that bind the clans together spiritually, connecting all the gathered Na'vi to Ewa through the Tree of Souls. Thousands of neural connections are made simultaneously, creating a web of shared consciousness that lets every warrior feel the presence of every other. They're no longer separate clans, but a unified people, joined in defense of their world. Neytiri moves through the preparations with focused intensity, organizing warriors, distributing weapons, ensuring everyone understands the battle plan. She and Jake work side by side, their partnership rebuilt through shared purpose, even as their personal relationship remains complicated. There's a tenderness between them now, a rebuilding of trust through action rather than words. The plan that emerges is both simple and desperate. They'll attack the human base directly, striking before the RDA can mobilize their full military force. The goal isn't to destroy Hell's Gate completely. That would require firepower the Na'vi don't possess. Instead, they'll target the bombers, the ships that humans use to strike from the air. If they can ground the fleet, if they can force the battle into the forest where Na'vi advantages matter, they might have a chance. It's a long shot, a desperate gamble against overwhelming technological superiority. But doing nothing means watching Pandora die slowly. Better to fight and possibly fail than to submit without resistance. At Hell's Gate, Quaritch has been preparing as well. Surveillance has shown him the gathering of Na'vi clans, the unprecedented unity forming around the Tree of Souls. He understands that this represents an existential threat to the human presence on Pandora. If the Na'vi attack with coordinated force, they could overwhelm the base's defenses through sheer numbers. So Quaritch proposes a preemptive strike. He'll take the largest bomber and a full military escort to the Tree of Souls and destroy it completely. Without that sacred center, the Na'vi unity will collapse. Their spiritual connection will be severed. They'll scatter back to their individual clans, demoralized and broken. Selfridge is uncomfortable with this plan. Attacking a sacred site seems like crossing a line even for him. But Quaritch argues persuasively that it's them or us, that half measures have failed, that overwhelming force is the only language the Na'vi will understand. Reluctantly, Selfridge authorizes the mission. The human force that launches is impressive and terrifying. Multiple Samson helicopters provide escort. AMP suits are loaded into the bombers to deploy as ground forces if needed. The main bomber carries enough explosives to level the entire area around the Tree of Souls, to create a crater where sacred ground currently exists. Quaritch leads from a Dragon assault ship, the largest and most heavily armed aircraft in the fleet. He's prepared for Na'vi resistance, but he believes human firepower will overcome any indigenous opposition. The Na'vi have bows and arrows, humans have missiles and machine guns. The outcome seems inevitable to him. The two forces meet in the air above the forest, and the battle that erupts is chaos on a scale Pandora has never witnessed. Thousands of Na'vi on banshees swarm the human aircraft, attacking from every angle, using their superior maneuverability against the humans' heavier firepower. Jake leads on Toruk, coordinating the Na'vi forces, calling out targets, inspiring warriors through his example. Neytiri flies beside him on her own banshee, her arrows finding vulnerable spots in helicopter engines and pilot canopies. Tsute commands another wing of riders, striking at the bombers' escort ships with suicidal bravery. The humans fight back with devastating efficiency. Machine guns tear through Na'vi riders, sending bodies and banshees spiraling toward the forest below. Missiles streak through the sky, exploding among clusters of Na'vi warriors, creating fireballs that consume multiple riders at once. The casualties are horrific on both sides, but proportionally worse for the Na'vi, who lack armor or anything beyond their own skill and courage. Trudy, flying one of the Samson helicopters, turns her guns on her own side, attacking the human forces from within. Her betrayal catches the military off guard, allowing several Na'vi strike teams to get through defenses that should have been impenetrable. But her defection is noticed quickly, and multiple aircraft turn their weapons on her. Jake watches helplessly as missiles converge on Trudy's helicopter. She tries to evade, her piloting skills extraordinary, but there are too many projectiles from too many angles. Her Samson explodes in mid-air, a fireball that marks the death of someone brave enough to betray her own species for what she believed was right. The battle spreads across the sky and down into the forest. Na'vi ground forces engage with AMP suits that have dropped from the aircraft, and here the fight is more equal. In the dense forest, the human size works against them, while Na'vi warriors can move through the trees with practiced grace, striking from unexpected angles. But the main bomber continues its approach towards the Tree of Souls, shrugging off attacks that would destroy lesser aircraft. Its armor is too thick for arrows to penetrate. Its weapons create zones of devastation around it, and it's getting closer to its target with every passing moment. Then something extraordinary happens, something that changes the entire nature of the battle. From the forest below, massive creatures begin emerging. Hammerhead Titanothers, herds of dire horses, packs of viper wolves, even thanators, the apex predators that normally hunt alone. They're moving together, coordinated, attacking the human forces with unprecedented unity. Pandora's wildlife has joined the battle. Jake watches in awe as hundreds of animals swarm over AMP suits, pulling them down through sheer weight and ferocity. Viper wolves leap at helicopter landing skids. Titanothers charge through human positions like living battering rams. The animals fight with purpose that transcends normal predatory behavior. They're defending their world. Neytiri understands first, shouting to Jake over the chaos. Ewa has heard them. The planetary consciousness recognized the threat and responded, not by taking sides in political conflicts, but by defending the balance of life itself. The humans represent an invasive force that would destroy Pandora's ecosystem. Ewa has mobilized the natural world to reject that invasion. The animal's intervention turns the tide. Human forces that were winning through technological superiority suddenly find themselves overwhelmed by sheer numbers and the ferocity of Pandora's natural defenders. AMP suits fall. Helicopters are forced to climb higher to escape animal attacks. The coordinated military assault dissolves into desperate defensive fighting. But the main bomber continues forward, its goal still achievable. Quaritch ignores the chaos around him, focused entirely on reaching the Tree of Souls and completing his mission. A few more minutes, and they'll be in position to drop their payload, to destroy the Na'vi's sacred center and break their resistance permanently. Jake sees the bomber's approach and makes a decision. On Toruk, he dives directly at the massive aircraft, calling for other riders to focus their attacks on this one target. If the bomber succeeds, everything else is meaningless. They must stop it regardless of the cost. He manages to get Toruk close enough to land on the bomber's surface, gripping the metal hull, looking for any vulnerability. Quaritch sees him through the canopy and recognizes the symbolic importance. Jake Sully, the traitor, the Marine who chose the wrong side, attacking humanity's last hope for securing Pandora's resources. The Colonel makes his own decision. He climbs into an AMP suit, equipped for atmospheric combat, and exits the bomber to confront Jake directly. This has become personal for him. Not just a military objective, but a matter of dealing with betrayal, with a soldier who abandoned his own kind. They fight on the bomber's hull as it flies towards the Tree of Souls, a combat between two warriors representing opposing visions for Pandora's future. Quaritch has the AMP suit's strength and weaponry. Jake has Toruk and his understanding of how to move through three-dimensional space in ways that human engineering never anticipated. The fight is brutal and desperate. Quaritch manages to force Jake away from the bomber, separating him from Toruk. They crash through the canopy into the forest below, their combat continuing on the ground. The AMP suit gives Quaritch overwhelming physical advantages, but Jake fights with the skill Neytiri taught him, using the forest itself as weapon and ally. Meanwhile, Neytiri sees Jake's Banshee, the one he first bonded with, flying confused and riderless through the battle. She calls to it, makes temporary connection, and rides it down toward where Jake and Quaritch are fighting. She arrives to see Quaritch's AMP suit pinning Jake against a tree, the Colonel preparing to deliver a killing blow. Neytiri fires 2 arrows in quick succession. The first strikes Quaritch's AMP suit without significant effect. The armor is too strong, but the second finds a gap, penetrating through to the human inside. Quaritch staggers, his suit's movements becoming erratic. He turns toward Neytiri, raising his weapons, but she's already moving, circling, firing again. This time the arrow strikes true, penetrating deep. Quaritch's AMP suit falls to its knees, then topples forward. The Colonel dies inside his mechanical armor, his last sight the forest he tried to conquer. Jake struggles to his feet, his avatar body battered, his breathing labored. His mask, the equipment that lets him breathe Pandora's atmosphere safely, was damaged in the fight. Without it, the air is toxic to his human-controlled avatar. He has only minutes before the lack of oxygen renders him unconscious. Neytiri rushes to him, understanding the danger immediately. She finds his spare mask in the equipment he carries and holds it over his face, letting him breathe, keeping him alive. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, everything else falls away. The battle, the betrayal, the complications, all of it becomes secondary to the simple truth that they love each other, that they've fought together, that they've chosen each other despite everything working against them. She tells him she sees him, truly sees him. He responds with the same words, his voice weak but sincere. They stay like that for a moment, holding each other, two beings from different worlds who found connection despite impossible odds. Above them, the battle is ending, with Quaritch dead and the bomber disabled by concentrated Na'vi attacks. The remaining human forces retreat. The military assault has failed catastrophically. The animals continue harassing the withdrawal, ensuring the humans flee rather than regroup. Back at Hell's Gate, Selfridge finally accepts defeat. The Na'vi resistance is stronger than anticipated. The cost in human lives and equipment is unsustainable, and without Quaritch's military leadership, the base's position is untenable. He orders a full evacuation. All non-essential personnel will return to Earth on the next transport ship. The RDA's presence on Pandora doesn't end completely, but it's dramatically reduced. Mining operations are suspended. Military forces are withdrawn. The few humans allowed to remain are scientists like Norm and Max, who've proven themselves friendly to the Na'vi cause, who see Pandora as something to study and protect rather than exploit. Jake watches the transport ships lift off from Hell's Gate, carrying humans back toward the orbiting starship that will take them on the 6-year journey home. Some of those leaving look relieved, eager to escape this dangerous moon. Others look defeated, angry at being forced to abandon their mission. But they're all leaving, and Pandora will have time to heal. Though Grace died during the desperate attempt to save her, her legacy continues. The Na'vi remember her as a human who tried to bridge the gap, who respected their culture, who fought to protect what she studied. Moat speaks of her during the ceremonies that follow the battle, honoring her as someone who understood the value of seeing truly. Jake thinks often of Grace in the days after the battle. She would have been proud of what happened. The Na'vi unified, humanity's aggression defeated, Pandora given a chance to exist on its own terms. But she would have grieved the deaths, both human and Na'vi, all the lives lost to conflicts that never should have happened. They create a memorial for her at the Tree of Souls, a place where her spirit can be remembered. The Na'vi believe that consciousness doesn't simply end at death, but returns to Ewa, joining the vast network of memories and wisdom that Pandora maintains. Grace is part of that now, her knowledge and passion woven into the world she loved. In the aftermath of victory, Jake faces a choice. He can continue living divided between his human body and his avatar, waking each day in the link unit, transferring his consciousness for hours at a time. Or he can do what was attempted with Grace, permanently transfer his consciousness from his human body to his avatar, becoming fully Na'vi. Moat explains that the ceremony is possible, but not guaranteed. It requires Ewa's acceptance, requires the planetary consciousness to facilitate the permanent transfer. Grace's attempt failed, perhaps because her injuries were too severe, perhaps because Ewa chose not to intervene. But Jake is healthy, his avatar body is strong, and he's proven his commitment to Pandora beyond any doubt. Neytiri supports his choice completely. She tells him that regardless of which body he inhabits, she sees him, sees his true self that transcends physical form. But she also acknowledges that life would be simpler if he could remain in his avatar permanently, if they didn't have to navigate the complications of his divided existence. The clans agree to perform the ceremony. It will happen at the Tree of Souls, with representatives from all the united clans participating, channeling their collective consciousness to help facilitate Jake's transformation. It's an honor they've only granted 5 times in history, to the 5 Toruk Makto who came before him. Jake's human body is brought to the Tree of Souls and laid beside his avatar body. Both are prepared carefully, positioned so their neural cues can connect to the tree's tendrils. The Na'vi gather in thousands, forming circles around the bodies, creating a living network of consciousness that will support the transfer. Jake enters his avatar body one final time through the link unit. He opens his avatar eyes and sees the assembled Na'vi, sees Neytiri beside him, sees the Tree of Souls glowing with bioluminescent energy. This will be the last time he makes this transition consciously. Either the transfer will succeed and his consciousness will remain permanently in the avatar body, or it will fail and he'll wake in his human form, condemned to continue living divided. He looks at his human body lying nearby, small, damaged, limited. That body served him for years, carried him through war and injury and the journey to Pandora. But it's not who he is anymore. His true self exists here, in this taller blue form that can run through forests and fly on banshees and connect directly with the world around him. Moat begins the ceremony, her voice rising in the traditional songs. The gathered Na'vi join her, thousands of voices blending into harmonies that seem to make the air itself vibrate. They connect their cues to the Tree of Souls, adding their consciousness to the collective effort, creating a wave of neural energy that flows through Pandora's root system. Jake feels the connection intensifying. His consciousness begins to stretch, to expand beyond the boundaries of his avatar body, to touch the vast network that Ewa represents. He can feel other minds, Neytiri's love, Moat's wisdom, the determination of thousands of warriors who fought beside him. He can feel Pandora itself, the living, breathing world that has become his home. The transfer happens gradually, almost gently. Jake feels his consciousness detaching from his human body, the connection that has sustained him for 30+ years, finally releasing. There's a moment of disorientation, of floating between states, of being nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Then his consciousness settles fully into his avatar body. But this time, it's different. This time, there's no human body waiting to wake up in, no link that will eventually call him back. He is his avatar now, completely and permanently. His human body lies empty, breathing slowing, heart rate dropping, life fading as consciousness abandons it. Jake opens his eyes, his only eyes now, and sees Pandora with absolute clarity. Every color seems brighter, every sound more distinct. He breathes Pandora's air without masks or filters, feeling it fill his lungs naturally. He moves his fingers, his tail, his ears, and everything responds perfectly, because this body is his body now, not temporarily borrowed, but permanently inhabited. Neytiri is leaning over him, her face showing joy and relief and wonder. She touches his face gently, confirming he's truly here, truly permanent. Jake sits up, the gathered Na'vi watching silently, waiting to see if the transfer succeeded. He stands on legs that work perfectly, that respond to every thought without hesitation. He takes Neytiri's hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, the strength of her grip. He looks around at the assembled clans, at the tree of souls glowing behind them, at the forest stretching in every direction under Pandora's alien sky. Moat speaks formally, declaring that the transfer is complete, that Jake Sully is no longer a dream walker, but a true Na'vi, his consciousness permanently joined to this body, his spirit fully committed to this world. The gathered clans respond with calls of celebration, with weapons raised in salute, with songs of welcome. The days and weeks that follow are peaceful in ways Jake never experienced before. There's rebuilding to do. The Omaticaya clan must create a new home. Other clans must return to their territories. Relationships between humans and Na'vi must be carefully managed. But the existential threat has passed. Pandora has time to breathe, to heal, to exist on its own terms. Jake and Neytiri move through this new reality together. Their bond, damaged by betrayal, has been rebuilt stronger through shared struggle and ultimate choice. They're fully mated now, recognized by all the clans, building a life together that holds purpose and joy. Jake continues to fly on Toruk, though he knows that eventually he'll release the great creature back to its solitary existence. Toruk Makto is a temporary role, a leadership position that emerges in times of crisis and dissolves when peace returns. But for now, he maintains the bond, using his position to help negotiate peace between Na'vi and the remaining humans, to ensure that the two species can coexist without repeating past violence. He works with Norm and Max and the other scientists who remained, helping them study Pandora in ways that respect rather than exploit. They've established protocols ensuring human research doesn't damage the ecosystem, that knowledge is gained through observation rather than extraction. It's the approach Grace always advocated, finally being implemented now that corporate interests no longer control human presence. Jake also spends time teaching young Na'vi about humans, about Earth, about the wider universe beyond Pandora. He tells them about stars and space travel, about different worlds and different ways of being, but he always emphasizes that Pandora is special, that what exists here, the neural networks, the connection to Ewa, the balance between consciousness and nature, is something rare and precious that must be protected. At night, Jake and Neytiri often visit the Tree of Souls, connecting to Ewa together, experiencing the vast collective consciousness that makes Pandora unique. Sometimes Jake can sense Grace there, her presence woven into the network, her wisdom accessible to anyone who connects deeply enough. It's not death as humans understand it, but transformation, consciousness preserved and shared within the living world. Jake no longer records video logs. That was something his human self did, documenting experiences for a future that felt uncertain. Now, his future is here, present, lived rather than recorded. He is Na'vi, fully and permanently. He is Toruk Makto, respected by all clans. He is Neytiri's mate, building a life with someone he loves completely. Most importantly, he is home. After years of feeling lost, of wandering through existence without purpose, Jake has found where he belongs. Not in the body he was born with, not in the world that raised him, but here on Pandora, among the people, living in harmony with a world that accepts him fully. On quiet evenings, sitting with Neytiri in the branches of their new home, watching Pandora's moons rise over the forest, Jake sometimes reflects on the journey that brought him here. The loss of his legs that seemed like the end of everything. The desperate acceptance of a corporate job on an alien world. The betrayal he committed and the trust he destroyed. The battle he helped lead and the choice he finally made. All of it led to this moment: peace, love, belonging, purpose. He is exactly where he needs to be, doing exactly what he's meant to do. And though the path was complicated and painful, though he made terrible mistakes that cost lives and broke hearts, he wouldn't change the destination. Because he is home, he is Na'vi. He is part of Pandora, and he will defend this world, this life, this love, for as long as his heart continues beating. The story ends not with grand declarations or dramatic conclusions, but with simple presence. Jake existing fully in the moment, connected to everything around him, finally at peace with who he has become. The forest breathes. Pandora lives. And somewhere in that vast living network, consciousness flows eternal, carrying the stories of all who have loved this world enough to become part of it. The end. If you are still awake, try our other movie story videos. Subscribe if you liked the video. Thanks.